We never know where life will lead us or what may hinder us along the way. But while every day can feel like one big question mark, it doesn't have to. With the right insights, strategies, and solutions from Western and Southern Financial Group, together we can look ahead to leave the unknown behind.
What's Pro Football Focus doing? Last week they had Brady. This week they got Brady.
We're literally doing it differently from everybody else.
As a matter of fact, moving forward from this point on, I will not make reference to PFF.
Ready to get into it?
Yeah.
All right. We're going team by team.
I would be very careful about slinging stuff.
Am I going to get sued?
We got legal on this?
I like football season, and all the things that go with it.
Welcome into the PFF NFL podcast. Steve Palazzolo, Sam Monson. We're back, Thursday edition, previewing all of the Week 5 NFL action.
There's a lot of variance in the tone and cadence there.
Yeah. You want to keep the listeners engaged.
Roller coaster of a.
Sometimes you're up. Sometimes you bring them in with a little whisper.
Uh-huh.
Messes with their headphones too.
That's true.
They hate that. How you doing, man? You ready?
Yeah. Let's go.
All right, Week 5. So yesterday we already previewed Broncos and Colts. Did I write that wrong? Where's this game?
It's Denver, right?
Yes, it's in Denver. I'm like, I don't know. I feel like I've been seeing it backwards. I'm picturing it in the dome, left and right, but it's in Denver. That's going to affect my pick. Yesterday we had Mike Kliss on to preview the show. Go check that out. We got in depth on some leadership stuff, the quarterback history at Denver, and what's going on with Russell Wilson. But you guys got to check out our Wednesday show. We had a fun one yesterday. Mike made his pick there. And did we give our picks on the show? We didn't, right? So let's do that right now. Thursday Night Football, get our picks in right now.
Got to do that now. And you also need to watch that show because that's when I was wearing my Vuori stuff, which I'm not doing right now.
It's not Vuori? Vuori.
It's difficult to tell. Even after watching the little instructional video on how to do it, it's still difficult to tell. But anyway, my point being I'm not wearing it now. And we're going to have that read coming up.
Yeah, we're going to tell you about Vuori later.
And it's bad timing. So you need to watch yesterday's show to get the visual impact and then hear the ad read. Anyway, Denver are favored by 3. Where are you going?
I like Indy if they were at home, and I was picturing it in the dome thinking I was going to take the Colts.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go Broncos.
I am definitely going Broncos.
I am
it's a clean sweep this week.
I think for the rest of Matt Ryan's career, I'm probably not going to bet on him in outdoor games.
Again, okay.
Yeah.
This is the first time that all 3 of us, you, I, and our guest, have gone with the same team.
Oh, interesting.
Same bet, rather.
Yeah, that's good. I love that you're keeping track of it there. All right, so we got 15 more games to discuss. We'll go through all of them. Let's start with Cincinnati Bengals at the Baltimore Ravens. This is Sunday Night Football. It's in Baltimore. Ravens favored by 3, implying that these teams are pretty even, which I think is fair. They're both 2-2. so they're very even. Bengals had a lot of success against the Ravens last year. Actually torched them, right, in Cincinnati here last year. And I got a lot of interesting Bengals numbers here. What are you looking for, though, in this one initially?
I think it's another interesting test of the Bengals' offensive line. Baltimore, again, they're another team that doesn't have one superstar pass rusher, but they have a platoon of guys that can all cause problems, and not just on the edge, but interior as well. It's a good group of pass rushers. It's another sort of litmus test for, is this offensive line actually any better than a year ago? It looks like it should be across at least 3 different spots, but it hasn't been so far. Now, they've been up against good competition, and we saw even last week that there is a difference in Joe Burrow's ability to function depending on quite how severe the pressure is. So that honestly is the story of every Bengals game from now for a while, is how bad is it going to be in the offensive line, and can Joe Burrow function behind what the kind of pressure he's going to get?
Yeah, so last year I hinted at the 2 games. It was actually the Bengals crushed them in both games. 41-21 day after Christmas. That was here. And then in Baltimore back in week 7, 41-17. Bengals won. At that time, I believe the Bengals stepped into the number 1 seed after week 7. And it was like, narrative changing, right? I had always hinted at this. If Joe Burrow is going to become the next quarterback, he's going to have these narrative changing types of wins over division opponents, and they've had those against the Ravens. Then the next week, Mike White beats the Bengals with the Jets 34-31. So the Jets took a step back. I mean, the Bengals took a step back after that win. But is this one of those where just the matchups fit the Bengals? We talked about Burrow against the blitz last year. The Ravens don't blitz as much, but matchup-wise, it still might just be favorable to what Cincinnati likes to do.
There are a few things I think that are different. One is that element that the Ravens are not going to blitz as much. Two, remember last year, Jamar Chase against the Ravens was horrific from a Baltimore standpoint. The first game, he had 8 catches for 200 yards and a touchdown. The second game, when they knew it was coming better, he still had 7 catches for 125 yards. Like, Jamar Chase went absolutely off against the Ravens. And I think the first game in particular was the one where Marlon Humphrey was surprised. Like, we've talked about this before, and I think it's true even when we went down to Bengals training camp and the joint practices with the Rams. Chase looks different in person in terms of speed, suddenness. Just, he looks like a more athletic and explosive individual in the flesh than he does when you're watching tape. I don't know why, I don't know how that works, but I think it's true. And I think there's a good degree to which a lot of people that played him last year were surprised by how big of a problem he is to cover. And I think Marlon Humphrey is like the poster child for that. Like, he lined up in press coverage on one play, and Chase went by him like he wasn't even there. Beat him at the line and then ran away from him in a huge play run after the catch. I doubt that happens this year. Like, I just think the Ravens are going to be better prepared for the task that is trying to cover Jamar Chase. So if Chase doesn't have, 150 yards in the game, that's obviously a huge swing in their favor.
There have been there was a pretty good discussion, I believe, is what NFL Live with Dan Orlovsky and Mina, Marcus Spears, Ryan Clark. They're all talking about the Bengals. I mean, they spent a while talking about under center versus the gun and tendencies and what you're looking defensively. It was a good discussion. Some of the numbers coming out of that. So a lot of people are talking about why are the Bengals struggling offensively. The run game is poor. So a couple of the numbers that stood out. They've got the lowest EPA per play against cover 2 or against 2 high looks when running the football. Sorry, lowest EPA per play running the football, basically, in Cincinnati this year. And Joe Burrow's facing the most 2 high looks. So a lot of cover 2, right? So they're facing these teams that are sitting back, 2 high safeties. The same thing we've talked about what teams were doing to Mahomes last year and doing to Josh Allen at various times, saying, we're not giving up big plays. We're going to make you pick us apart underneath. And the Bengals haven't had a lot of good answers for that. So Burrow's got a 45 passing grade, no big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays against 2 high so far this year. It has not been good. And I say that to say that's also not what the Ravens like to do. They don't play cover 2. They don't do that a whole lot. They've played like 10 snaps of cover 2. And it's because it's so early in the season, when you go back and look at the teams that are playing the most cover 2, it's teams that have played the Bengals. So it's like it's the Cowboys, it's the Chiefs, teams. It's the Steelers, and the Cowboys are like 1-3 or something like that. And my question is it like the Chiefs last year, where teams are just saying, this is the game plan to stop the Bengals. We're just going to run it. And the Cowboys aren't really a cover 2 team. The Steelers aren't really a cover 2 team. They're just going to do it because we're playing Cincinnati. So are the Ravens going to do that, right? Are they going to come out of their comfort zone a little bit and play, invite the run, win up front like teams have been doing against the Bengals, and not letting Burrow and Chase and Higgins beat them over the top?
Yeah, I think at this point there's no reason not to run that. The downside to all that 2 high kind of look is, are you going to struggle against the run? But the Bengals can't run the ball because the offensive line is playing badly, and they telegraph what they're calling.
This was like when we talked about the Bills having like the best of both worlds, like they're rushing 4 and pressuring the passer. This is the opposite for the Bengals. If you can't run the ball and you can't complete passes against soft coverages, it's bad. That's bad offense.
Yeah. So at the moment, there's literally no incentive for defenses to do anything other than run that kind of coverage, because you take away their single biggest threat, or at least dramatically increase your ability to deal with it by having more guys deep. And the downside is you're slightly weaker against the run, where they're at their worst, because 1, the offensive line is struggling, and 2, they are, I think they're they might be the worst team in the NFL in terms of tipping what they're doing, like pre-snap. I think they have very obvious tendencies that they're just not changing. Like they're prepared to go with that. And that's kind of, it's one thing if you're good enough and you're executing anyway. And it's like, I don't care if you know what we're doing. Knowing it is one thing, stopping it is another thing. But the Bengals aren't. Like, they're struggling relative to where they should be, and not picking up the low-hanging fruit of trying to disguise it a little bit and confuse the defense seems not ideal.
So where are you leaning in this one? Because you've got the Ravens coming off a game where it was a tough one against the Bills. They were up 20-3, end up blowing the lead. The Ravens are, I mean, they're a handful of plays from being 4-0 for whatever that's worth, right? Blew it against the Dolphins, blew it against the Bills. I don't love this matchup for the Ravens, though. I just don't. Unless they change the way they play, I don't love this matchup for the Ravens. I think the Bengals are starting to. They're getting incrementally better every single week, and that was the big adjustment they made last year, which was put more on your quarterback's plate. And I think they can do that, right? It's not like Joe Burrow is going to be incompetent against too high looks. I don't think. Just like I think over time Mahomes figures out those looks, and you scheme up against it. So I think it's all doable, and I think the Bengals are gonna. I like them as underdogs, man. 3 points, 3 points on the road. I like the way the Bengals are trending here.
So you're going Cincinnati.
I'm going to take Cincinnati.
I'm going to take Baltimore. I think that defense will be a challenge for Cincinnati's offense again. I think the Bengals offense the Ravens offense is a fascinating, element of this as well. They're obviously one of the most unique offenses in the NFL. Cincinnati's defense has looked really good. On the other hand, you look at the quarterbacks they face, and you're like, if they hadn't looked good, that would be a problem. So all of a sudden, you're going to get a different level of test this week, and we might find out that actually that Bengals defense isn't quite as good as it looked. So I'm going Ravens. Good test for the Bengals. You're right with Lamar. Generally playing well. He's just been, he's been the key to the Ravens' running game more than ever, right? You don't have efficiency outside of that, but we've seen the Bengals scheme it up and do pretty well against the Mahomes and Lamars of the world and everything. So, all right, I'll take the Bengals, man. Let's do that. I got to find my first read here. It is Viore. Go check out yesterday's show. Sam was wearing it. Viore. That's what they tell me. All right, that's fine.
How did you do it? Like the real way, it's like slightly different pronunciation.
Yeah, I was taking a stab at the real way, but that's
anyway. We're talking incredible versatility and comfort. You know what? Actually, I got a message. My best friend Mike. And I shout him out because he's a listener. He's like, "That's my stuff. That's my brand." Mike is like high class. That dude. He's looking for versatility too.
Yeah.
He's a dad. He's a dad on the run, trying to look good and be comfortable all at the same time. So like Mike's like my the prototype here for Viore. So he's loving it. He's trying to get the promo code as well. It's designed to look great in everyday life, in or outside the gym, perfect for any workout, activity. So, if you're nice and if you are active like you are, right? You're always working out. You could work out in this stuff and look good all at the same time. And it was easy to select. I'm looking at the polos over there. What'd you end up getting? A couple shirts?
I got a waffle knit hoodie thing, like a sort of t-shirt hoodie deal, those kind of things. The light, not
right. That's right. Yeah, those are legit.
That yellow sweatshirty thing, the kind of light sweatshirt deal.
Yeah, so it's light, but it's perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect this time of year.
Yes,
as well.
That's what they had a ton of shorts and stuff, and I was like, no, look, it's getting cold. I'm not going to go with the summer stuff. I'm going to target winter wear, or at least fall wear, things with sleeves.
Yeah. Well, perfect time for that. Viore is an investment in your happiness. For our listeners, we're offering 20% off your first purchase. Get yourself some of the most comfortable and versatile clothing on the planet at Viore.com/PFF. That's VUORI.com/PFF.
See, I went to /show notes, and there was nothing there. I had to...
Yeah.
I had to go with the
I
PFF.
do want to email them and say, could you just activate show code really quick just in case somebody types it in? Just in case. So not only will you receive 20% off your first purchase, but don't talk over me when I'm talking about free shipping here.
Sorry.
You get free shipping on any U.S. order over $75 plus free returns. Go to Viore.com and Viore.com/PFF and discover the versatility of Viore clothing. Did you have something else you wanted to say?
So long as we get credit for anybody that signs up using /show code.
What if there's like a show code podcast and we're just feeding them people?
Well, then you've
show code
undermined us.
podcast.
You've chopped our knees out from under us with the Vuori people.
That'd be embarrassing. I'm not gonna lie, it was challenging picking the best games of the week.
Okay.
So I had to go with 3-1 Giants.
You went with the Giants.
They're 3-1.
The Giant. The
3-1 Giants and the 3-1 Packers.
Yes.
I mean, it's like a battle for the number one, for
Have you
the number
seen-
2 seed in the NFC behind the
Have you
Eagles.
watched the Giants play football this year?
Yeah, you are what your record is.
I don't think that's true.
You can't say that with a straight face.
No, I don't think that's true.
Come on, we've hated on the Giants enough. Let's give them some credit. They're at the top of the show here.
Okay.
In this battle of 3-1 teams, the Packers are favored by 8. It's in
Yeah.
London again. I know it's across the pond, but are they playing in a different city or is it London?
No, it's London.
Okay.
There's
the Germany game later this year.
They had who was it? Stacey Dales maybe was doing a report somewhere from London, and she was coming live from St James's Park, which is a park in London, but it's also the name of Newcastle's football stadium. I thought someone had, for a prank, centered in Newcastle for the game. That would have been hilarious.
That would be funny.
It's like a couple of 100 miles in the wrong direction up north. If she'd just been standing outside St James's Park with the mic reporting on a game that was taking place nowhere near there, I would have appreciated that as a prank. That would have been amazing. But sadly, she was actually coming from the park in London, so it wasn't quite as funny. Anyway, yeah, this game is in London. It's an 8-point spread for Green Bay, and it's happening at 9 in the morning, presumably. And yet you've decided this is one of the games of the week. This is why I don't let you do the spreadsheet.
I mean, the Giants are tied for the league lead with the most explosive runs.
They might not have a healthy quarterback.
So,
you don't think that's a problem?
yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a problem.
Yeah. Daniel Jones got a hobbled ankle.
Yeah.
Tyrod Taylor got concussed. Saquon was running wildcat snaps in the game.
So Packers roll.
I mean, yeah.
Next.
This doesn't feel like a game of the week to me, based
We'll
off
find
current
another game of the
analysis.
week.
Well, it's a little late now. No, I want to hear you justify.
We're going to go through
Explain to me why this game is interesting.
because both teams are 3-1.
Explain to me in a way that doesn't include 3-1.
Because the Giants are going to try to run the ball. Saquon's got a ton of yards this year. They're going to try to run the ball, keep it away from Aaron Rodgers. We've got some cool matchups. Rashawn Gary against rookie right tackle Evan Neal.
Cool matchup.
Cool matchups. Yeah, it's a cool matchup. And you got a little cat and mouse game here. You got Wink Martindale. Loves to blitz, right?
Yeah.
Loves to come. But you don't blitz Aaron Rodgers.
Uh-huh.
And last year, I mean, we don't have too many matchups. Last year, the Ravens had like 7 practice squad corners out there, and they didn't blitz once. I mean, they blitzed twice. That was it. And so I want to see, how do the Giants attack the Packers?
You're reading out a list of ways that this game isn't interesting.
Oh, these are fun things. These are fun things.
So
I mean, I'm happy for you as we go through the other 13 games. I'm happy for you to point out this would be the game of the week.
So effectively, your argument is that this game will be entertaining because the Packers are dramatically better than the Giants and will stomp them.
So we think, but anything can happen across the pond.
Anything can happen across the pond.
It's like Miami.
Did you know that this is the first game that's taken place in London where both teams enter the game with a winning record?
No. Really?
Yeah.
The NFL did a really good job of just.
That's how much the NFL has been screwing London in this whole process. This is the first game where both teams have a winning record, and one of them we believe to be hugely fraudulent.
Yeah, and one of them we're like, this is the worst 3-1 team we've ever seen.
Yeah.
Since the last
That's
one.
what London has been dealing with in the last decade worth of these games.
Well, anyway, what are you looking forward to seeing in this game?
Not much.
Perfect. I
I mean, you're right. Like the Rashawn Gary versus Evan Neal thing is fascinating in a morbid beatdown kind of way.
What do you mean? Give Evan Neal some credit. Maybe he's gonna start figuring out. Andrew Thomas, the top left tackle in the NFL.
Yeah, who will presumably face almost nothing of Rashawn Gary because why would he? So that, Andrew Thomas is playing really well. The rest of the line isn't, and the rest of the line is going to have to contend with Green Bay's best players. So that's probably an issue. I mean, look, Saquon is an interesting player to watch right now because he looks to be playing towards his best, if not at his best right now. He's able to turn stuff, busted plays into something significant like we saw last week. But, God, if he's the only thing they have going for them, which might actually be the case at this point.
It's less exciting, but it is somewhat interesting because you have the Patriots. Like, Packers are running into a little bit of good luck here with the Patriots. They've got their backup quarterback out there. He lasts a series. So they've got a fourth-round rookie making his NFL debut 1 week. The next week, we don't know who the Giants are trotting out there at quarterback as well. I'm somewhat fascinated by these games when you have a team that is an underdog like the Giants, and they're going to have to try to shorten the game and play ball control. And the Patriots did that well last week, right? You got a pick six in there. You run the ball pretty well. Before you know it, New England actually had a chance to win, even though they're pretty much overmatched by Rodgers and the Packers. So to see if the Giants can pull that off. Saquon is averaging 5.5 yards per attempt, which is probably similar to what Daniel Jones is averaging as a passer. Let's see. Yeah, 6. So it's pretty close. Add sacks in there, and the Giants' run game has actually been more efficient than their pass game so far. So can they shorten the game, play good defense, and not give up the explosive plays against the Packers? That's the question.
No,
I don't think so either. Yeah, I don't think they can. Dexter Lawrence had a massive game last week. I mean, that's the Giants' chance here. If they can win up front. Leonard Williams has been banged up. We'll see if he comes back. Kayvon Thibodeau, Dexter Lawrence. I mean, on paper, that's starting to look like a pretty good defensive line if they're all playing to their capabilities.
Daniel Jones needs one good carry for him to be averaging more on the ground than he is as a passer.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that's the other thing, too, is I don't know how healthy Daniel Jones is going to be. What is he officially questionable?
I assume he's questionable. Like, that's the standard for that thing. I would imagine he plays, but he's working on a hobbled ankle, so I don't imagine he plays.
Officially questionable. Limited
well.
Capacity yesterday. So, yeah, we'll see.
Good choice.
Where are you going with this one?
Green Bay.
We'll go to the next game of the week then.
Yeah.
Look through the list. I'll take Green Bay as well. Who's the next game of the week?
Well, apparently it's the Chargers against the Browns.
Is that fair? Is that better?
I mean, it's better than the last game, yeah.
Chargers at the Browns. We got the Chargers favored by 2.5 here. Myles Garrett coming back for the Browns. Browns got absolutely whooped up front last week. And it was one of those, they spent the offseason, somewhat neglecting interior defensive line. And, they were trying to stitch it together. They made some moves on the edge, but both, Myles Garrett, who they have as a star, obviously, he was hurt. Jadeveon Clowney hurt, and they just struggled against the Falcons. Falcons ran all over them. But Myles Garrett's back, at least this week. So what are you looking for in this one?
Yeah, Garrett changes everything for Cleveland's defense. This, though, sometimes there are games that are kind of repeats of a year ago that were significant games last season, and you get a chance to kind of run it back and see what the changes that each team made have done to the way that game panned out. Remember, this game was the game where Cleveland just ran all over the Chargers defense and sort of made the point that, hey, the idea of inviting the run only works to a point. It's probably the most efficient way of playing defense as long as you can stop the run short of it being more valuable than the equivalent pass play on average. And the Chargers couldn't. They were so bad against the run that the Cleveland was just able to rack up 6+ yards per carry and just dominate.
I was calling that like football from 2032 at the time. It felt futuristic. Like, offense was crazy. Both teams were going for every single fourth down. They were maximizing possessions and all sorts of stuff, and it was just out of this world.
So the Chargers made a bunch of changes to the defense in the offseason. They bring in a bunch of guys that should help the run game. Now, the Browns and the Chargers this season are averaging the same 1.5 yards before contact in the run game, which is lower third, I think. Lower third, bottom half, somewhere in that range. But the Chargers are still second last overall in yards per carry against the run, 5.4 yards per carry. Now, Nick Chubb is dominant. The Browns' offensive line is pretty dominant. Nick Chubb has broken 32 tackles, which is 10 more than any other running back on the ground this year.
Good.
So this has the potential to go the same way as a year ago, even with the changes that the Chargers have made on defense.
Chargers' run defense is 13th worst, just by pure PFF grade. The Browns' run blocking grade is 4th, and their actual running grade, their runners, number 1, led by Nick Chubb, as you said. So then then you're talking Justin Herbert and Jacoby Brissett going head to head, and Brissett, he's been a little up and down. We were singing his praises before last week, took a step back last week. Can he play that game managery type of role that he's been playing, especially against this Chargers defense? They'll probably give you some underneath stuff. Versus Herbert, who, battling through the torn cartilage. Torn?
Yes.
The torn cartilage in his ribs. Is that healed by now, doctor?
Broken.
Broken. That's right. It was broken.
Feels like
a
it
bone.
should be torn, but apparently it's break.
Should be better by now. Herbert, though, looked much more like himself last week than he did end of week 2 and into week 3. So definitely looks healthier. And again, I don't know. It'll be that Myles Garrett matchup will be fascinating, right? We talked about Jamari Salyer, the 6th rounder, filling in for Rashawn Slater last week at left tackle. And Salyer was fantastic. But as much as our pass protection is pretty consistent, but also pretty dependent on who you play. Mm-hmm. Talk about it when we get to the Rams game, when you talk like Joe Noteboom. 2 good games, 2 bad games. Like the bad games were against elite rushers. Like when he had to face Von Miller, when he had to face Nick Bosa, it was bad. And we see people like Orlando Brown have good overall seasons where they have like a 7 pressure outing against Myles Garrett. So Salyer was really good last week against the Texans, but against Myles Garrett.
Yeah, and look, in his defense, the Texans have some formidable pass rushers. Now, they don't have a Myles Garrett, but they have players that it's an achievement to give up no pressure against the edge rushers that the Texans can deploy. Now, it's a step up again to say, all right, now it's Myles Garrett. Good luck. But it's not like he played, it's not like he went up against a team that has no edge rushers whatsoever, and it's kind of expected or not a huge noteworthy achievement to give up nothing last week. He actually did that against a team that can bring some pressure. So I think that was an impressive game from Salyer, but yes, this is another step entirely.
All right, Chargers by 2.5. It's on the road. Last year was in LA, right? It was in the Dome.
Yeah.
Where are you going with this one?
Open Dome.
Where are you going with this one?
Browns. I think they'll still be able to run the ball fairly much at will. I think Jacoby Brissett has been good enough that as long as he doesn't create some horrible pick 6 in there, they'll roll.
I'm still going with the Chargers. Was that 2? What we got for home? Yeah, home under. Okay, yeah, I'm taking the Chargers here. I'm going to take the Chargers to win this thing. I'm still buying into them. I think healthy Justin Herbert's gonna sling it around a little bit. Denzel Ward finally playing a little bit better than he was earlier in the season. I'm torn on the Browns roster. You've been talking them up. I think they are ultimately a little bit worse than they've been the last couple years.
I think the defensive line without Myles Garrett stinks. If Myles Garrett's there,
it does change a lot.
Yeah.
It does change a lot. This thing again. As you all know by now, this season we've been following Symbol, the stock market for sports. Symbol lets you trade pro and college teams like stocks and even earn cash dividend payouts when your teams win. It's a great way to speculate on sports teams in a long-term stock market style format. So here's a little mid-season update on how a few teams are performing since week 1. We get the Vikings up over 5% on the week after knocking off the Saints. The Bucs are down 7% on the week after back-to-back losses, and the Chiefs are up over 3% on the week after beating the Bucs. Now, if the Bucs are down, I would buy low on them. That's my hint. Bucs have an easy schedule coming up. I would suggest buying low on the Bucs. The Broncos are also down over 4% this week after falling to the Raiders. And the big winner this week, the Philadelphia Eagles, up over 9% on the week after their 4-0 start. So you can check out the entire market by downloading the Symbol mobile app for iOS by searching SIMBULL in the App Store. Use the code FOOTBALL to receive a free team stock valued up to $150 upon signing up. It's really a fun market and a great way to speculate on teams that are rising and falling. Download the app, create a free account, enter code FOOTBALL to get a free stock valued up to $150 after signing up. And don't hold me to my tips. I'm just telling you, look ahead, look at team schedules, and anticipate.
Was the word y'all really in the read?
I didn't say y'all.
Yeah, you did.
When did I say y'all?
Like literally the first line of the read.
As you all know.
You said y'all.
I did?
Yes.
No.
You did. This is like that ad. Can I get a challenge flag on that? It happened. I'm not so traumatized by the word that I invented it coming out of your mouth. Like you said.
You had a read where you actually had to say y'all a couple weeks ago.
Wasn't yeah, there's emails that I had to say.
I'm not doing
that anymore.
And I just went full Southern?
Yeah.
I mean, Cincinnati's basically the South. I'm a Southerner now.
We can see the border, with Kentucky.
I need to say Harvard and Ka and Pak as something to offset this. I need to get back to my roots. Yeah. Tyler, if you could play back the replay, I would like to know if I did actually say y'all.
We actually have the ability to run that challenge flag. We can do that. We have the technology.
Okay. What's the next game?
Philly
What's
at
the next
Arizona.
game, y'all?
Philly at Arizona.
Philadelphia Eagles at the Arizona Cardinals. Eagles by 5.5 on the road against the Cardinals.
Mm-hmm.
If this game, again, I've mentioned this before, if this game's happening in Week 14 and we just have a little bit more data on both teams, it feels like it would be 10.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Doesn't it feel like the way these teams are playing, this should be 10? And I know the Eagles have dominated a couple first halves and let teams back in, and the score's been a little bit tighter than it should be. But doesn't it feel like the Eagles are a much better team, even on the road?
Yeah, I think because the Cardinals have a Kyler Murray, there's a degree of respect for the fact that they can still hang a ton of points on people, even when things aren't going great. There we go. Look, the challenge flag has come back. He did say y'all.
Stone, can you come and announce that as a referee?
I win my challenge.
After further review, the ruling on the field is upheld.
I get to keep my timeouts.
Stands.
And I win.
You could challenge later.
Yeah.
If I say y'all again. All right, officially a Southerner.
Mm-hmm. That's a rough way to find out live on a podcast.
Unprompted y'all.
Yeah, so I think there's still some respect for what the Cardinals can do when things are clicking, but there's only so long they can not fire before we give up on it and say, no, this is just not going to work. And I think this is a rough matchup for them. That offensive line, it's actually been doing reasonably well, but it's a banged up interior now, and they're going up against Philadelphia's defensive line, they haven't actually got a great pressure rate this year. It's just that they went crazy ape against Washington and got like 1 million sacks. But they do have a sort of worse version of that 2017 defense where they can go 7 deep with a bunch of guys that can get pressure. And a bunch of them are in the interior. All of a sudden the prospect of deploying a Jordan Davis against anybody that the Cardinals can throw out there is kind of scary.
The Eagles they're pairing coverage and their pass rush as well as any team in the league right now, is what I would say. I know pressure rate might not be there, but again, they've been in a lot of garbage time situations from a defensive standpoint, right? Playing defense against the Lions up a lot, against the Vikings when they were up a lot, against Washington when they were up by a lot. So yes, converting pressure to sacks is often on the quarterback, right? When you're facing Carson Wentz, that happens 30% of the time. That's double what most quarterbacks do. So sack rate might be inflated a little bit, but you also have the Eagles this is the biggest change. 10-plus yard throws, EPA per play is third best in the NFL. So they're, again, last year they were doing a good job of not giving up big plays, but they were giving up high completion rate and all that fun stuff, and it's just completely different this year. Darius Slay and James Bradbury both playing equally well, once again, on the outside. TJ Edwards, your guy, makes the all-pro team, all-pro first team, and here's your completion percentage number. They're the only team. Let's see what happens when we take out. Oh, no, I pressed the wrong way. Negated plays. They have the lowest completion percentage allowed against in the league. Lowest completion percentage against in the NFL. Did it work? Here it comes. Yeah, 58.3. They're the only team allowing under 60% completions so far this year.
Yeah, they've been really good. I think they're a very good defense, and I think they're actually a good matchup for the Cardinals as well. So I don't love this game for Arizona. Somebody in the chat, by the way, Mojal, says that if any ad read is going to have y'all in it, it really should be Western and Southern. It's a pretty fair point. Fair point, well made.
Could sprinkle that in. Can do that. Hey, y'all looking to get some life insurance? We'll get there. Western and Southern's later. We'll
also,
later.
hit the like button.
Has anybody hit the like button?
I mean, some people have, but not
just
enough.
40.
Yeah.
Man.
It's a tiny fraction of the people watching. I mean, you got to ask what the rest are doing.
We get about, an eighth of the people, whatever it is. All right. What else are you looking for in this game here?
I mean, anytime I'm continually interested in how Jalen Hurts is going to keep going. You know, this incredible start to the season. He was our first team All-Pro quarterback for the first quarter of the year, quarter-ish. And that's like, he's the key to how good Philadelphia wants to be this year is dependent on Jalen Hurts. Everything they've done in the offseason was good. They've made the team significantly better on both sides of the ball, but it doesn't matter if Jalen Hurts is going to go back to being good, not great. But if Jalen Hurts keeps playing at this level, I don't even mean like maintaining first-team All-Pro kind of level. If he's just in that vicinity, if he's one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL this year, then all of a sudden Philadelphia is right there amongst the Super Bowl contenders, not just teams that are going to make the playoffs and, you know, maybe could beat teams. They're actually like a favorite.
I tweeted it out last night. Well, let me piggyback on that really quick. Jalen Hurts last year would have games where he was good. He had good games where he was good. But there was a lot of games where it felt like the pass game didn't do much for 3 quarters, and then they were in a comeback situation, and he would kind of, bring them back a little bit. Did it against the Chiefs, did it against the Bucs a little bit, against some good teams. But it felt very disjointed early in the game. I do feel like the missing piece there, though, is A.J. Brown, right? Like if you have a disjointed, inconsistent passing attack, having a guy to go to on just, hit A.J. Brown on the slant. You'll pick up a first down. It also could go for 40 with his yards after the catch ability. I tweeted out last night, and it's not a new take for me, but I said coming out of the draft, no player I'd rather have on night 1 of the draft than A.J. Brown, plus his contract.
Yeah.
I think every single team, including the Jaguars at 1, the Lions at 2, could not have made a better move than to get A.J. Brown. I'm not saying the Stafford trade before. Like of the players available on draft night, A.J. Brown and Hollywood Brown were both available because they were traded. And all the players that were drafted, A.J. Brown is the player that I would want.
He has been the most valuable first-round pick that was spent this year.
Right? I agree. And listen, there's a few Cardinals fans coming at me like, Marquise Brown is right up there too. And I'm like, no, I don't. He's not having the same effect on the Cardinals offense that A.J. Brown is. I don't care what their yardage totals look like. The Eagles run the ball a ton, and they haven't even played football in the second half for 2 or 3 games because they've been up so much. A.J. Brown is just like Tyreek Hill. They are the 2 single most influential players on any teams this offseason so far through 4 weeks because the Eagles and Dolphins went from mid-tier offenses to top-tier offenses or bottom-tier offenses to top-tier offenses. So A.J. Brown, I'd say he's the biggest impact on Jalen Hurts' development. And again, we said, let's anticipate that. Let's see if that happens. And so far it has.
Agreed.
Just give me the Eagles.
Yeah, same.
All right. Both going Eagles, 5.5. It's an interesting matchup, but it's also a 14-point spread. The Pittsburgh Steelers at the Buffalo Bills. I'm just saying, if Mitchell Trubisky was under center, do you think this is 14?
Yeah.
I don't think it's
14. I don't think it got
worse.
I don't think the line gets worse with Pickett at quarterback.
Like, if you asked me in a vacuum, I would agree. But I also don't think a Trubisky-led Steelers team is going to be a 14-point underdog at Buffalo.
This is the biggest spread of the year so far, right?
Yeah. I mean, this was like last year. This was Buffalo every week. Texans and Jets. And every time they played bottom-tier caliber teams, they were almost 15-point favorites every single time.
I think it's also a reflection of Pittsburgh just lost to the Jets, Yeah. Trubisky or no.
I get it.
They lost to a team that isn't great.
Pickett's lost, not Trubisky's.
Well,
QB wins. Change it. Change the game, man. Advanced analytics here.
It's a big line for a team like Pittsburgh, but a lot of that is just like legacy feelings. Like, how good is Pittsburgh really this season? Not great.
I do think they're different without T.J. Watt. If T.J. Watt's in there,
yeah,
and Mink is playing at a high level, I know he's banged up. He's got a knee, but I would just say, yeah, they're not as good without their star edge rusher.
So this is the game that was always going to be the challenge for Kenny Pickett coming in at this kind of time of the season. It's like you get one game against the Jets. And the Jets are their defense is not abysmal anymore, I mean,
it's not the ACC.
Yeah.
So you're going to face good teams.
The Jets have got some decent pass rushers. They've got some decent guys in the secondary as well. All of a sudden, like the Jets, it's not like last year's Jets, which would have been a great game to start any rookie against. So it was a significant team to start against, but the next run of games is where that's a nightmare run of defenses you're going to face, starting with Buffalo, who have the best pass rush in the NFL. They rank, I think, third in pressure rate, despite blitzing by far the lowest amount of any team in the NFL. They blitz 8% of the time. They rush with 4 guys.
Highest pass rush grade, 86.6.
Pretty much every play, and they win pretty much every play. So all of a sudden, we're going to get a really good test of how much this Pittsburgh offensive line is actually decent at pass protection and how much of it has just been, scheme, whatever. Like
they're grading well right now. They're performing well, but have they faced a rush like this?
They grade well. They are performing pretty well. They've given up a really low volume of pressure. The quarterback is not getting rid of the ball as quickly as Roethlisberger did the last 2 years, so it's not strictly a product of that. Now, the breakdown of those average times to throw is a little bit janky, which is where I think it does start to come back to, hey, the scheme is protecting this offensive line still. But we're going to get an idea now of how good those guys can actually block players one-on-one, because Buffalo is going to show up with the best pass rush in the NFL. And then you're also going to get to see what Kenny Pickett does when he's under a decent degree of pressure.
Again, my biggest question for Pittsburgh with Kenny Pickett, was it yesterday? Because I repeat myself a lot. Was it yesterday's show? I said the same exact thing, but I'll repeat it anyway. Is how much of it was the scheme when it comes to Big Ben and Mitchell Trubisky? Because we said, they're getting rid of the ball quickly. We had mentioned a guy that's a fan of our show that is a part of another NFL podcast. I always mention his name. You said you should cut back on that. Greg. It's Craig.
Well done.
Greg said it feels. He made a good point one time. It felt like the Steelers were building an offense around a team that has 3 shifty slot receivers when they really have 2 big-bodied downfield threats plus Deontay Johnson, who's one of the best route runners in the NFL. Is that the scheme? Or was it the fact that Big Ben was old, Trubisky doesn't take high-value throws, and he's throwing these low-percentage throws left and right, either low percentage down the field or high percentage, low-value throws? Are there higher-value throws that are baked into this offensive system that Kenny Pickett's going to unlock somehow? In a tiny sample size, throws a seam to Pat Freiermuth, and, he made some plays, right? He's gonna at least give George Pickens opportunities. He's going to give Chase Claypool opportunities. And last year I said, if Big Ben's going to go out with a bang, even if he can't throw the ball downfield accurately, just chuck it up. Just chuck it up, because you got some guys who can win every now and again, and you'll stumble into 40 points every now and then. You'll stumble into some good offense.
Yeah.
Pickett might have that. Now, that is a boomer bust style if you play like that. You're going to have one week where the Steelers look great, another week all that, he throws 4 picks or something like that. But I'm curious to see if Pickett brings some of that energy to the offense, which means this can go either way. They could get absolutely annihilated, or it could be, 30-24 or something like that. It's the Steelers hung tough. Good job, Kenny Pickett. You were never going to win against Buffalo, but you hung tough. You showed something for the Steelers. I could see it going either way there. But I think, the Bills are going to win. I anticipate the Bills winning.
Yes.
The Steelers did beat the Bills week 1 last year, much like the Steelers kind of took it to the Bengals in the week 1 game this year. But I don't see that happening again. So I like Buffalo. 14's a lot, though, because I just painted 2 different pictures of, this volatile Kenny Pickett, high energy, good game that kind of keeps them close and gives Pittsburgh fans some hope.
Yeah, 14 is a lot of points. But there's a lot of ways that this could go south in a hurry for Pittsburgh. The only real way that they avoid getting their ass kicked, I think, is if Kenny Pickett heaves the ball up a few times and his receivers end up coming down with it.
And Josh Allen heaves it to the other team, heaves it to Buffalo a few times.
Which is entirely possible.
To Pittsburgh.
But it really needs to be kind of Pickens. Deontay Johnson has made some spectacular catches, but is not really a contested catch kind of monster or a guy that's going to go up and win passes that he shouldn't necessarily. And as much as Chase Claypool should be that guy, he hasn't really been. It's
he's the classic can do, but doesn't do it enough guy, right?
Exactly.
If you just look at Claypool's highlights, you'd be like, just throw this guy the ball, but you don't see all the times he's failed.
And also, it's remember, he hit the ground running so well as a rookie. It's wow, this guy, we stole him in the mid rounds. He's another case of Pittsburgh finding wide receivers from everywhere, and the rest of the draft missed. And then the longer his career progresses, you're like, nah, maybe he was actually drafted where he should have been. This is As much as the good things are there, there's a reason that he isn't as good as everybody else.
But it's a good trio, man. It's a good trio plus Freiermuth, man. It's a good group. We've been lauding the Cowboys for a couple of years for having Amari Cooper, Michael Gallup, and CeeDee Lamb. I don't think, plus Dalton Schultz in the middle. I don't think they're at that level necessarily, but they're close. I think they can be close. There's a consistency issue with Claypool. Deontay Johnson gets the drops every now and again, but they have guys who can get open, guys who can win down the field, and a tight end who can win in the middle. That should create good offense. And I think Pittsburgh will do more of that with Pickett, but then we'll have some rookie games in there where Pickett looks not so good. I'm going to say Pittsburgh does it. I think they're just going to feed off rookie energy and keep it tight against a Super Bowl contender.
When was the last time Pittsburgh lost by 14?
Did they against Minnesota last year on Thursday
They
Night
lost
Football?
by exactly 14 in Week 3 last year against the Bengals, 10-24.
That was the fourth. Yeah, it could have been closer
Minnesota-
if Big Ben didn't check down on 4th and 10.
Minnesota was only 8 points.
That's 'cause,
there we go.
Minnesota let them back
I
in.
forgot. Kansas City gave them an absolute whooping. In
Kansas
Week
City
16.
whooped them in the playoffs.
36-10. No, Week 16. The
Oh,
playoffs
Week
was
16
also
and the
the
playoffs.
playoffs was also an ass kick.
There
That
you
was
go.
21 points. So
Yeah.
the Chiefs twice. But other than that, it's back to Week 3.
Yeah, so give me Pittsburgh to keep it close-ish, as in like within 2 scores.
No, I'm going. I think Buffalo cover, even though it's 2 touchdowns.
All right, let's go. Hey, y'all. PFF NFL podcast is sponsored by Western and Southern Financial Group. While you focus on your roster moves, Western and Southern helps advance your money moves. Buying your first home, planning to start a family, wondering how to make your money grow? Well, Western and Southern's playbook of life insurance, investment, and retirement solutions help you rest assured on game day. Team up to understand needs and address goals with a game plan built just for you. Get started at westernsouthern.com/PFF. There's the website right there on the YouTube channel. Go check it out, westernsouthern.com/PFF. Jets and Dolphins in New York or New Jersey. Dolphins at the Jets. The Dolphins are favored by 3.
Mm-hmm.
Don't make faces at me.
No, not.
Okay. What are you looking for in this one?
So, Zach Wilson last week, under pressure, 37.5% of the time against Pittsburgh. Blitz a little over 25% of the time. I would imagine both of those numbers go up this week. And that feels bad for the Jets.
He's already the biggest concern we had with Zach Wilson last year, at least mine, that I've said a bunch, was how slow his time to throw was, right? His start from snap to the end of the play. And once again, last week, 3.31 for a non-scrambler, right? The other guys that are really high this year in time to throw, Justin Fields, Daniel Jones, Lamar Jackson, Marcus Mariota, Jalen Hurts, Jacoby Brissett, Justin Herbert, all those guys have some extend the play ability. That's a big part of their game. It's what they do. It's really not a part of Wilson's game. Mm-hmm. It's not. He has some plays. I mean, he's got some good outside of the pocket plays. It's not nearly as part of his game the way it has been for Daniel Jones, Lamar, Mariota, whatever. So he's got to get rid of the ball quicker. You have to do it.
Miami are one of the most blitz-happy teams in the NFL. They might be back to being the most blitz-happy after dialing it down for Lamar. I haven't got this week's numbers to hand. Zach Wilson, for his career against the blitz, no touchdowns, 3 interceptions, a completion percentage of 43.2%, 4.7 yards per attempt, a passer rating of 47.5, and a PFF grade of 42.
That's against the blitz?
Yeah.
It's not good.
No.
Did Wilson turn a corner, though? Second half, man. 82 passing grade in the second half. Is that just progression? He was getting the rust off, and he's turned it around.
If he turned the corner, he turned it on like the last drive.
Last drive, yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's possible, but feels unlikely.
So as much as I'm complaining about him getting rid of the ball quicker, and I know that's this year's sample, that is also a function of having the receivers who get open. And as you rely on Garrett Wilson a little bit more, and I think Wilson has a chance to emerge as the true 1, and Corey Davis slots in as the 2 where he should be, and you have Elijah Moore and all that stuff, that could make help him get rid of the ball quicker. Do you just chalk it up to a little first game rust, even though it looked a lot like last year?
I mean, I think it's going to be a work in progress. Like, we're pretty negative about Zach Wilson overall. There was obviously a lot of talent. We liked him coming out. It's just that the things he's been struggling at are pretty bad things for a young quarterback to be dealing with, and this is a particularly bad matchup to be dealing with those things. So, yeah, look, I think he's going to be able to make some plays and get Garrett Wilson in particular the ball, but I think he's going to be under pressure upwards of 40% of the time. I think he's going to be blitzed to high heaven. Like, it's going to be rough.
We should have said at the top, Teddy Bridgewater's getting the start for the Dolphins over Tua. Tua's not going – I assume he's not going through your traditional concussion protocol because he had 2 concussions in 4 days.
I mean, they immediately ruled him out of this game.
They ruled him out already.
Like back when that happened.
And we had talked about this a little bit on the daily and on this show, that it's like it's not just like a 7-day, go through some tests, especially when you have 2 in a short amount of time. We really could be looking at 3 or 4 weeks and them being really cautious.
I mean, Chris Nowinski, who we mentioned on the daily, the sort of advocate, I guess, for concussion health and CTE and all this kind of stuff. I mean, he was saying, honestly, given what happened to him, they should shut him down for the season. Now, they won't, because this is the NFL. But that's the severity of the kind of thing we're talking about, and that's the kind of thing that might happen in other sports that deal with this. That's the thing that the Dolphins now have to juggle is, okay, we've kind of admitted that we screwed this whole process up, right? We fired the doctor that was involved, and we're changing the concussion protocols to make sure that this can't happen. So with that in mind, and what we've sort of determined has happened, i.e. probably 2 concussions in pretty rapid order, they're kind of backed into a corner in terms of, but he's good now. You know, maybe we sat him out that game, but now we can come back. That's tough. I don't know what the correct answer to that is, because I don't think anybody knows what the correct time to come back from that kind of thing is. I mean, some experts, I was listening, Ollie Connolly had a good podcast with, I forget her name, but she's an expert in this field in CTE research and all this kind of stuff. And she was saying that you can definitely be dealing with effects of a concussion for up to 28 days after the hit. Now that is what you're talking about. That's several weeks out, and that's like a baseline of what we're talking about, not the rapid, 2 subsequent or 2 sequential.
But then the question is, are you just waiting to not have effects, or are you waiting for the ideal time that you're not more susceptible to the next one? I don't know.
Problem is, nobody knows what that is.
I don't know if you're more susceptible to the next concussion, but it's when you get the next concussion, it's more dangerous, I believe. I think that was what the research has brought out. Not that you're more likely to get one, but if you do, they do get progressively worse.
But the problem now that they have is nobody really knows what the time scale for actually returning from something like this should be. It's like, we know, we can determine when they stop getting symptoms. We can determine roughly when we think the brain is healed from that hit, but we don't know if there's any difference whatsoever between that line and like a month later or 2 months later or whatever. And that's the tricky situation the Dolphins now find themselves in because of what happened.
Say what you want about the NFL, though. They try to read public sentiment and then make the public happy. They try to.
And this is a creditable thing in your eyes.
Oh no, I'm just giving the information.
Okay.
So the information at hand to me is the public outcry was Tua never should have been out there, and they're gonna come in and say, okay, let's
fire a doctor.
Yeah, we'll fire a doctor and like keep Tua out for a few weeks just to let this thing blow over. Is what I'm saying.
But again, like, I think that's a very difficult thing to now pluck out of the sky. Is when's he supposed to come back?
I don't know, but Teddy's in this week.
Yeah.
It's, to me, this is like the more. First off, having Teddy Bridgewater or Jacoby Brissett as your backup quarterback,
great,
is really valuable,
particularly in this offense.
We've said Jacoby Brissett's the best backup quarterback in the league, I think, unless Teddy Bridgewater is not starting. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater, I think, is still probably he's still a top 32 starter. In a world where, I mean, no offense to Zach Wilson, Teddy Bridgewater is a better starter than Zach Wilson right now. Zach Wilson is there because there's the hope he can be something more.
So is Jacoby right now.
Yeah, Jacoby is too. So the Dolphins have the advantage at quarterback. And again, I think we have, even the other day, I think Bridgewater hit Tyreek with a deep ball, which was beautiful. Tyreek Hill is a deep ball cheap code for quarterbacks. We've seen him help Alex Smith lead the league. We've seen what he's done with Mahomes. Not that Mahomes isn't good without him. We know that. But we've seen what he's done with Tua. And I don't think this changes the Dolphins offense. It's still going to be cooking with Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill. So I think the Dolphins will have big plays that they'll be able to create once again. They'll give Zach Wilson some problems. But the Jets are better. I mean, it's not last year's Jets. They have players. You've got pass rushers. You've got Sauce Gardner and DJ Reed. I am interested to see those matchups against these Dolphins receivers. Those will be good.
No, I think this is a fascinating matchup because of that. Can Tyreek Hill, essentially on his own, but he also has Jalen Waddle, can he have the same impact on Teddy Bridgewater that he had on Alex Smith, which is essentially to manufacture aggression out of a pathologically conservative quarterback? Though Teddy and Alex Smith are very similar in that regard. Those guys do not like pushing the ball deep down the field unless they know for a fact it's going to be wide the hell open and there's no risk attached to it. When Alex Smith had Tyreek Hill that year in Kansas City, that dude was just looking up, single coverage, boom, immediate auto throw deep. Teddy Bridgewater, in the limited sample size we saw in that game, had an average depth of target over 10 yards. That's massive for Teddy. That's 4 yards higher than you would normally expect to see from him. So that, I think, is going to be an interesting element. And then the other part is DJ Reed and Sauce Gardner have been playing really well. DJ Reed right now has given up 44.4% of catches into his coverage, a passer rating of 32.9. Sauce Gardner looks great. I am also just incredibly fascinated to see just the physical, just the visual of Sauce Gardner's running style trying to cover Tyreek Hill. That feels like just a hysterical matchup from a physical standpoint.
Was it early in Tyreek's career, when he went head-to-head with Jalen Ramsey, there was like a play where I think Ramsey got hands on him and like stoned him at the line of scrimmage. And then there was one where Tyreek just ghosted him, right? Like right past him. You might be able to see some of that in a one-on-one matchup here.
The visual of Sauce trying to run with Tyreek Hill feels really funny.
All right, so I like this matchup. I like Miami. I think I like Miami here. The one other thing I'll say is Miami and Mike McDaniel still scheming it up pretty well. And as I've said with Saleh's defense with the Jets, there's just been a few too many of those coverage busts. And I think when you're talking about an offense that has really good route combos and speed receivers that you have to account for, I think they're going to create those open throws, and Teddy's going to take advantage. Unless you get Quinnen Williams and Carl Lawson and some of those pass rushers to really take over. But I like the Dolphins here, man. I think they're the same. I think they're the same team. No Tua hate here, but they're the same team, I think, with Teddy Bridgewater and Tua. We'll see. All right, Las Vegas Raiders at the Kansas City Chiefs. Chiefs by 7. This is Monday Night Football.
I'm also taking Miami, if that wasn't clear.
Oh, I read the document, and then in my head was like, oh, yeah, you already said it. Sorry. Did you have anything else on that? Why you're taking Miami?
No, just taking Miami.
My apologies. Raiders Chiefs. 7 points. Raiders are 1-3. Chiefs are 3-1. Is this a blowout?
God, it feels like it might be. The Raiders' defense against Mahomes is the obvious thing that everyone's going to be talking about, particularly given how that matchup went in 2 games last year, albeit with different setup. But I actually think the opposite side of this is why it might end up being a beatdown. A kind of stumbling Raiders offense that just isn't together and doesn't seem to have any answers to anything right now, going up against the Spags defense and the kind of problems that they can cause through mixing it up and moving guys around, all those kinds of things. That just feels like a bad matchup. And if the Raiders can't score in this game, how are they going to hang with the Chiefs?
I would just suggest don't completely overrate last year. Last year was a very narrative-driven. It was like the narrative just occurred on the field, which was the Chiefs were struggling with certain coverages. The Raiders don't run those coverages. They ran what they do, and the Chiefs crushed them. Back to 2 games. But the previous year, you had the Raiders. I mean, the Chiefs pretty much lost in 2020. They lost 1 regular season game until week 17 when they lost to the Chargers. I think they were sitting everybody or whatever it was. The Chiefs were basically a 15-1 team with their only loss coming to the Raiders. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't necessarily – and the Raiders, I mean, they gave up over 30 points. in that game, and then the second game was Chiefs 35-31 over the Raiders. But the Raiders just played them tough, and it wasn't. They had enough. They gave up a lot of points.
Yeah.
But they did enough against Mahomes to kind of like force him into a couple mistakes and sack him a few times and all that stuff. Like, they played him tough, but they won the game because Carr just came out of his shell and was like, I got to go head to head with this offense. I got to throw the ball deep. And that, to me, that's the multi-year answer here. It's not just, last year the Raiders had no chance. They do have a chance, but it's Carr throwing the ball down the field, Mac Hollins going off, Devontae and Waller and all these guys taking advantage of them. This has to be the game where the Raiders go super aggressive, put the ball in Carr's hands, and he plays better.
Yeah, but that's kind of my point, is that, okay, they were good against the Chiefs in a couple of games 2 years ago, but that required scoring 30-plus points both times. Right now, this offense can barely function.
Fair point.
Like, okay, it can happen. Like, sure. We've been saying that the sum of the parts of this offense is light years different from what we're seeing right now. So I guess at any given moment, there could be a switch flipped, and all of a sudden the Raiders are the best offense in the NFL, or one of them. But until that happens, I don't think you can assume it's like this game. This is the game it happens in. All of a sudden, everyone's going to remember they're actually really good players and start playing amazingly together. Until we see that, you probably have to assume that this Raiders offense is going to continue to sputter, particularly against the Spags defense. And if they do, can they stop Kansas City hanging 30 on them?
Maybe not. No.
Yeah.
I mean, I like the Chiefs a lot in this one. Are we have one of our Raiders apologists always making Raiders apologies in the comments or whatever. But across the league, are we underrating the move to new systems, whether it's Derek Carr with Josh McDaniels or Russell Wilson with Nathaniel Hackett, even Carson Wentz in Washington, with guys that have been around the league for a while? It's different from, here's this rookie or whatever it is, or this journeyman backup. We're talking Russ has been not in the same system, but at least in the same world for a while. Derek Carr's been with Gruden for a few years in his system. McDaniels is different, man. He's very different. Are we underrating that transition period? Kind of like Brady going to the Bucs, Peyton going to the Broncos. They had, some growing pains in there. Are we underrating that when it comes to, say, Derek Carr in this situation?
Yes.
Okay.
I think generally that's a true statement. I think the late Dr. Eric Eager,
rest in peace.
Right.
Eric is still alive.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's done a lot of research in terms of the impact that simply changing offensive coordinators or systems, will have, and not having the continuity year to year is a major thing. So when you hear people make excuses for quarterbacks, you're like, well, he's had 6 different systems in 7 years or whatever. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
The difference between that and having the same system for 3 straight years is a major obstacle. Now, it's not necessarily one that they can't overcome, and we've seen constantly the players can do that. But it is a real thing, and particularly if you're bringing in a whole new system, as a coach to a different team. And I think the one extra element there is that McDaniels comes from an offense that isn't connected to other offenses. Like the sort of root of that system is different. It's not like a Shanahan offense where even the offshoot, like the Shanahan offense and the McVay offense are connected by a common ancestor, So even if you come from one system to another, technically it's a completely different offense, but it's close enough that you can get by. It's sort of like Portuguese and Spanish are 2 completely different languages, but there's a common enough ancestor that it won't take you that long to get from one to the other, Mm-hmm. The McDaniels offense is not like that. That's a completely different ancestor. That's like, is it Finnish, the one language that doesn't bear any resemblance to anything else? It's not. It's like doesn't have a common ancestor.
It might be.
I'm not great at the
I know the romantic languages are.
They're all connected, yeah. But I think it's either Finnish or Hungarian or one of those. It's like a completely different. It's not connected to other languages. It's just its own thing.
Josh McDaniels' playbook is in Hungarian, is what you're saying.
Live Ben Stockwell fact checking me again. It is Finnish and Hungarian, so I got it.
There we go.
So Josh McDaniels is bringing a Finnish or Hungarian offense to the table.
Yeah. I won't go off on any tangents. Here's a number. So here's the other question I have, right? I do believe, I I believe that the Raiders are at their best when Derek Carr is like YOLO balling. It's not YOLOs, but it's aggressiveness, right? I've said this many times. The Raiders have won one game right now. It was last week. Josh Jacobs goes off against the Broncos. Our friend Mike Kliss, as he said, maybe that the Raiders they own the Broncos. Maybe it's a matchup thing. Is that what McDaniels is feeling right now, though, right? Carr wasn't bad against the Titans the week before, but they couldn't put points on the board. There have been points in McDaniels' run, even with the Patriots, where they changed, right? They were 3 wide. They were 2 tight ends. They were pass heavy. They were run heavy. Is he going to feel that and say, okay, as other teams have tried against the Chiefs, we're going to play keep away and we're going to run the ball, and it's going to be, we have to run through Josh Jacobs. We're not going to force to Devontae Adams or anything like that. And if the Raiders do that, here's the number that stands out to me that's interesting. We separate run blocking from rushing, from what the runner does. The Raiders have the number 2 rushing grade, run grade. They're running backs, essentially. Number 2 in the NFL, despite having the 4th lowest run blocking grade. So they're essentially having success on the ground because of their running backs over the run blocking, which I think is unsustainable. And I think if you start to lean into that, if you're the Raiders, it could go sour. And if it feels like that might be what they try. It's going to be like a run, pass, run, pass. And if it works, if you keep getting the 4, you do keep Mahomes off the field a little bit.
Yeah.
But when you don't, it becomes blowout territory.
Yeah.
And I'm feeling that a little bit more than the Raiders building on last week's good game.
The concern with that is, number one, almost everybody that's attempted that against Kansas City, it hasn't worked. The only team I think that actually should be able to win that way is Baltimore. And even Baltimore took, how many times did they lose in a run before they finally got one where it worked? And even then, it didn't work in that way. Like, it worked because Lamar just actually had a great game passing. And that's how they won. So that theory, I think I like as an abstract concept. I think it should make sense against Kansas City. But all of the evidence so far suggests it doesn't.
Yeah.
And then the other problem is, right now, Kansas City has the 3rd best defense in the NFL in yards per attempt allowed, like 3.4 yards per carry.
So much better than they've been in the
past.
Which
is just enough that if you ran it 4 times and got that average, you would keep moving the chains. But it doesn't give you an awful lot of wiggle room.
I don't think that's how it works.
I don't either. But I'm just saying, mathematically, it checks out. If you're looking at that and going, well, can we keep running the ball every down and move the chains? The answer is yes.
It's just it's a funny thing that teams always go back, and like the Raiders this week are going to go back to the Colts game and say, how do they beat the Chiefs?
By a sequence of freaky plays.
But they're also going to look at it and be like, they picked up 4. It's one of those games where if you're a Chiefs fan and you're so frustrated in your defense watching the Colts, not that they're bad, it's like, oh, you just gave up 4. You just gave up a 3rd and 4, 5-yard completion on 3rd and 4. You just gave up an 8-yard completion on 3rd and 7. They're picking up 4 a pop. It's an easy thing for an offensive team to like chase because it's worked once in a long while. But when it doesn't work, you're in blowout territory. And I think we're leaning more toward that.
The Raiders' best chance is A.J. Cole III. He's one of the best punters in the NFL. If he somehow drops a whole bunch right on Sky Moore and just have him like butterfingers him away, 2 or 3 of those, they're right in this game.
How much did we put on your Sky Moore's going to lead the team in receiving yards bet?
Yeah, it's not going well so far.
No. Is that
amongst wide receivers? It's not quite as dumb as you made it.
No, amongst wide receivers.
Yeah.
I picked Juju. You picked Sky Moore.
Yeah, it's not the Sky Moore. The futures on Sky Moore are not looking great. That being said, like, who's the leader right now?
I don't know. I don't have it in front of me.
224 yards from Juju.
What's it, 50 from Sky?
61.
61.
But on 3 catches, that yards per reception figures off the charts. If he just gets a few more passes thrown
Sky Moore's averaging 20 per reception. What I would do is give him more receptions, and you'll create those 20-yard plays.
This is the argument I would make.
Who are you taking in this one?
The Chiefs.
Also, taking the Chiefs, covering the 7, Monday Night Football. We'll see. Weird stuff could happen. It's also in Kansas City. Feels like a 1-4 start here for the Raiders.
Yeah.
All right, we're halfway through. Dallas Cowboys at the Los Angeles Rams. We got the Rams by 5.5.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is a good example of like Vegas doesn't buy into the feels, right? The feels for the Rams right now after getting whooped on Monday Night Football 24-9 against the 49ers. This is where Vegas doesn't buy into the last thing that you saw.
Well, you say
or
that.
The thing that the matchup driven part of it, where the 49ers and Rams are seem to be a bad matchup for the Rams. 5.5 is a lot of points, man.
It is. So that part, you're right. But the line did move a couple of points after that Monday Night Football game. Like, that game made the line shift.
Yeah, I'm not saying you completely ignore it. Again, if you're just looking at matchups, you're going to say Dallas's defense has been really good this year. They're led by Micah Parsons in particular, but DeMarcus Lawrence, and they're rushing the passer. Even Dante Fowler is doing, they've gotten after the quarterback at a high rate this year in Dallas. And you're looking at the Rams' offensive line, the worst pass blocking grade in the NFL. Mm-hmm. It could be another rough one for the Rams offensively. Yeah. At the same time, I think the Rams' defense remains very good. They have a rough matchup against the Niners. It's not like they gave up 17 points against the Niners offense, and one was a freak play by Deebo Samuel. Rams' defense is really good going up against Cooper Rush and the Cowboys.
Yeah, sort of.
Tell me more.
Well, the meme guy was mocking me because every week I'm like,
good.
How is Aaron Donald going to affect this game? Yeah, and Aaron Donald was basically anonymous on Monday night against the 49ers.
You should lean into the Aaron Donald takes.
Well, so I was like, all right, he is only, has a good PFF grade right now. He's like well below it would be his worst year in the NFL, I think, right now, if his grade held for the rest of the year. He's, quote unquote, only got 16 pressures. He's only got 2 sacks. He has been relatively anonymous. And in that 49ers game, he didn't do an awful lot at all. One play where they left him completely unblocked by mistake, and one play where he busted through in a run play and made a tackle for loss. But so I was like, all right, well, let's go look at the tape and figure out what is happening to Aaron Donald that he isn't wrecking the game the way he usually is. Like, is he... Remember, we've talked before about how his entire life right now is tape study to try and identify when he's going to get a one-on-one so that he can win, because the rest of the time it's like he's just being taken out of the game. And the lengths that the Rams defense is going to try to get Donald away from double teams is absurd. Like, there was a play in that game.
Well, the first play, Donald just goes in unblocked. It's like, well, that was not the plan by the Niners. One of the first plays.
He genuinely is being double or triple teamed basically every single play. It's madness when you look at what's happening to this poor guy. They lined him up as like an off-the-ball linebacker and gave him like a running start at the line to try and confuse them at one point. He's lining up as like a wide 9 on a bunch of plays to try and give him one-on-one with the tackle. Even then, they still find his way, and he just gets the double team with the guard. Plus, look, Aaron Donald is amazing. I think he's the best player in the NFL regardless of position. Do you understand the kind of speed and burst off the line you need to be able to get pressure from a wide 9 alignment? Donald is amazing. He isn't that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, like, he was like, there was a play where he was
I would want him to be doing that all the time.
Well outside the tight end as a wide 9 to try and get. It's like, come on, that's just not going to work. I understand that might be the chance he has of getting one-on-one, but he's not going to get there in time. They occasionally gave him one-on-one, but it was usually on the plays where they were running like a quick screen. So he'd like, the poor guy was like, when you sort of, you tease a dog with a ball, it's like, and you throw it and you don't. And the dog like runs away. It's like,
I do that with my kids.
Yeah, where'd the ball go? Yeah. That was like Aaron Donald when they gave him a one-on-one. He's like, immediate swim move into the backfield. Where's the ball? It's over there with Deebo. Gone. Like, Deebo's got it and he's going for 20 yards. Unlucky. That was what was happening to Donald. So the upshot of this is Aaron Donald is still freaking amazing. He is being eliminated from the games by like double and triple teams. The Rams, I don't think, are helping by the way they're moving him around, because I think actually it's putting him in positions where he's just not as effective, like wide 9 trying to, And then the last element is what it does, I think, is raise the question of, like, what the hell are the rest of the defense doing? If Aaron Donald has taken 3 guys on a play, where is everybody else? Why are you not winning one-on-one against other people, if not like 2-on-1? That's the question to me, is not why is Aaron Donald relatively anonymous right now? It's where the hell is everybody else?
Well, that's, who else has a pass rush grade? They've been blitzing Bobby Wagner a little bit more. I think that was always going to be a little part of the game plan this year. 34 blitzes in 4 games. That's like on the high end for a linebacker. Nothing crazy. So I think they knew coming in, like, they're going to have to use Bobby Wagner a little bit more. Jalen Ramsey's blitzed 10 times. It's not a ton, but I think they knew, hey, we don't have Von Miller. And Leonard Floyd, say what you want about Leonard Floyd and his sack totals and all that stuff through the years, he's been a good, not great pass rusher who has had a lot of sacks over the last couple of years. And he's even taken a step back. He has been, Leonard Floyd's been one of the most consistent, by our numbers, consistent players in the NFL over the last few years. Pass rush grades in the 60s over the last 3 years. It jumped up to 75 last year. That was his best. He's down under 60 right now. No sacks, 3 QB hits, 8 total pressures. Leonard Floyd's not doing the job. And Greg Gaines is not a good pass rusher. Those are the other two guys that have a lot of pass rush opportunities. So they're just not built. They're not built essentially to get after the quarterback, or they're not getting the guys to step up to get to the quarterback beyond Aaron Donald. So that's part of the issue here.
The other three
with the Rams
defensive linemen that have gotten the most pass rushing snaps for the Rams this season: Leonard Floyd, Greg Gaines, and Terrell Lewis. Those guys all have PFF pass rushing grades in the 50s. None of them. None of them, right, have gotten...
On a pure production standpoint, Donald is down a little bit this year. He has 16 pressures. The next few guys on the team, Leonard Floyd has 8, Greg Gaines has 4, Justin Hollins has 3. That's 15. The next 3 guys have fewer pressures than just Aaron Donald himself.
He's still double anybody on the team, and he's being double and triple teamed out of the games. Like, somebody else on this Rams defensive front needs to step up because Donald has taken 3 guys out of the play.
So that's part of the issue with the Rams right now. But you talk about stars and scrubs with the Rams, 3 guys with, blue grades, right? Dark green to blue grades. It is Aaron Donald. It is Bobby Wagner. It is Jalen Ramsey. The stars are playing like stars. Ramsey had the 3 pass breakups, 2 weeks ago? He's got 4 on the season. All of those guys are playing well. Ernest Jones playing well at linebacker, but they need help, especially when it comes to the trenches.
Yeah. I think Dallas, as much as we just talked about that whole Aaron Donald dynamic, Dallas's biggest weakness on the offensive line is left guard. If it's not left guard, it's center. Like, they have a weakness on the interior that can be attacked. It's going to be a challenge for them to do what the 49ers did and dedicate that much resource to Aaron Donald. So
a lot of trench talk in this one.
Yeah, that'll help. And then I think the fascinating thing is the other side, where all of a sudden the Rams offensive line, which is in pieces right now, has to try and block Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence. My statistical nugget for this game: Joseph Noteboom, through 4 weeks, has given up 20 pressures. Andrew Whitworth, through the Super Bowl, gave up 20 pressures last year.
It's a little different.
So he's already tied Whitworth for the amount of pressures given up.
And as I mentioned, 5 of those are sacks, which, again, I don't care. The difference in a sack versus a hit or hurries on the quarterback and other stuff.
Well, sometimes.
Sometimes. I mean, if you get beaten really, really quickly,
yes,
it is bad. But all I'm saying is we capture that in the grade, not the stat. It's better captured in the grade. And the Noteboom grades that stand out when he faced the 2 elite edge rushers, week 1, a lot of Vaughn. Week 4, a lot of Nick Bosa. Those grades were in the 40s. Mm-hmm. When he's playing Atlanta, that does not have good edge rushers. When he played at Arizona, I mean, those 2 teams have 2 of the worst edge rush situations in the NFL. Noteboom's grades in the 70s and 80s. So he's got 16 of those 20 pressures against the tough competition. We're facing tough competition this week against the Cowboys. That's a concern.
Yes.
The revolving door on the interior with the injuries and all that stuff, that's a concern with the Rams. I'll also say this: Micah Parsons last week, I went back to watch, why did he only have a handful of pressures? First off, Washington did give him a lot of attention, right? So 2 things are true. Washington gave him a lot of attention. He was chipped, and there was help, and left guard Andrew Norwell was keeping an eye on him. But then when he was one-on-one with Charles Leno did great. He did a fantastic job against Parsons. He was attacking him differently. It was very impressive. So this is what Parsons has to deal with now. It's going to be tough to be a 6, 7, 8 pressure a game guy with more attention, different blocking schemes, and tackles even just on one-on-ones attacking him differently. I think the tackles that have been more proactive in going to get Parsons a little bit more, like Leno did, are having some success. The guys that have been passive, he has owned. So that is what I'm looking at, is how much are teams going to adjust to Parsons here.
So I think Dallas's defense matches up really well with the Rams. I think their front can cause them all kinds of problems. What really concerns me about this game is, so I think that part is huge. I think Dallas is actually a really good matchup there, and that would lead me to taking Dallas. The issue is like you're still starting Cooper Rush, right? And like, okay, Cooper Rush has been doing well relative to expectations. And he had one really good game in there against the Giants, who, are the Giants. The idea...
3-1.
Yes. There are people out there that think that Dallas should go with Cooper Rush when Dak gets back, which is just...
They don't really believe it.
No, they do.
They might be saying it, but they don't really.
They believe it. Like, I asked the question, like, what is this madness that people are saying? And people were like, oh... did nobody notice that Dak hasn't been playing well dating back to last year? What does he do better than Cooper Rush right now? Jerry, you went with the hot hand when Dak Prescott got the job over Tony Romo. Why won't he do it again? All this stuff.
What does he do better?
Everything.
Quarterbacking.
Yeah. So the good game against the Giants, great. But Cooper Rush right now, the stats look very good. He's got 4 touchdowns. He's got no interceptions. He's got a passer rating of 95.9. But in 2 of the last 3 games, he's had 2 turnover-worthy plays. That kind of luck doesn't sustain for any period of time.
You're talking me into it.
Like, if the Rams get a couple of turnover-worthy plays by Cooper Rush, they're probably going to get a turnover out of that, and that's a big problem for Dallas.
Man, I think it's low scoring. I think it's going to be low scoring. It's a battle. I want to lean Dallas. I just think it's going to be close. 5.5 feels rich for a team that is...
Yeah. I hate this
really
matchup.
struggling rushing the passer against a Dallas team that number 2 pass rush grade against worst pass blocking grade. I got to go Dallas here, even though the Cooper Rush thing makes me want to not bet on him.
I hate this matchup for Dallas. I think or for the Rams, rather. I think it's a horrible matchup for that offense. Because
it just feels like it should be a 3-point or 4-point. Like, it shouldn't be 5.5.
No. The one element that I think helps the Rams is, Cooper Kupp is effectively their only good offensive weapon right now. He is going up naturally against the weakest member of the Dallas secondary in Jordan Lewis, who's the guy that covers the slot primarily for them. So that, I think, is an element that at least goes in their favor.
Back to the Rams. I'm flipping back to the Rams.
I think this is a really tough one to pick.
The other part of it is, I try to reiterate this every year, because we get so caught up in narrative street and all that stuff. Every Super Bowl winner, every really good team goes through they have bad games. They have bad stretches. And it's important, I think, as analysts not to overreact to those. If we would have said the Rams are cooked 3 times last year. We would have said the Bucs are cooked in 2020. And the one year that the Chiefs actually won it was probably their most uncomfortable season for their fans.
I also
a Mahomes injury and games where they didn't look good, and they won the Super Bowl that
I also
year.
refuse to believe that Cooper Kupp is going to go undefeated as a starter with
Cooper Rush.
Damn it. Cooper Rush is going to go undefeated as a starter while Dak Prescott is on the shelf. That's not going to happen. It can't happen. So, therefore, the Rams will win and just about covered the 5.5.
Yeah, where's the ginger talent go this week? It's dispersed.
Yeah,
it's not concentrated in 2 games. It's in 3.
Yeah.
So that's a big question.
It's a good question.
I don't think it's going to be in L.A. I think it's going to be elsewhere. Nolans. It's going to be in Nolans.
I mean, L.A. is a very unpleasant what's the word?
Place in general?
No, it is, yeah. The weather environment for ginger people, A lot of heat, a lot of sunshine. That doesn't go well with the ginger complexion, Pasty skin and the ginger hair.
Speaking of gingers, Carson Wentz and the Washington Commanders.
I thought you were transitioning into an ad read. I was like, wow, what are we
We should have
selling this week.
We should have something, ginger ale or something like that. Washington Commanders getting 1.5 at home against the Tennessee Titans. What are you looking for in this one?
So the Titans right now, their defense is allowing the highest passer rating in the NFL by a pretty big margin to opposing quarterbacks. Some of that is a product of who they faced. On the other hand, they've also faced Daniel Jones and the Giants. So the 3-1 Giants,
Thank you.
Juggernaut in the NFC. But it feels like a pretty good get-right spot for Carson Wentz and Washington. Now, if they can't get right in this game, I think you need to start writing the obituary for this team and figuring out how they get out of the Carson Wentz thing, which, was not an unreasonable it was a pretty high chance that was going to be a thing anyway. But this is where it starts if they can't function as an offense.
Trying to get some big-name guests for next week.
Yeah?
They're too busy.
Yeah.
Can I
That's a good update.
Can I say who they are? I think so. I think we should Twitter pressure them into joining the show. They're very busy on Wednesdays.
Yeah.
Could we make Tuesday work with them?
Yeah, depending on what it is.
So it's Big Cat and PFT.
Uh-huh.
It just feels natural that they would want it. We are the top NFL podcast featuring an Irishman based out of Cincinnati. Number one in that demographic. And I think they should want to join the show.
But also,
they should want to be a part of this. And why do we want them on the show?
Because we use our guests to preview Thursday Night Football. And Thursday Night Football next week is Washington against Chicago, which is each one of those is a fan of one of those teams.
Yeah. So it feels natural that they would want to be on the top NFL podcast in a week when their teams are playing each other. Wednesday's usually our day. They're both swamped. PFT, Big Cat, they're both swamped all day Wednesday. I'm willing to do something on Tuesday. I'm willing to pre-record the interview on Tuesday if they are. But we need our people. We need our people to like tag them and just pressure them like, hey, join the PFF NFL podcast. And if we get enough pressure, maybe we can strong arm them into being a part of the show. Can you make Tuesday work? I know you have a busy Tuesday.
It depends when it is, but I can try.
All right, let's go. Let's go strong arm them on Twitter. Go bully them on Twitter nicely and say you guys need to join the PFF NFL podcast next week to preview Commanders Bears. But this week, we're talking Commanders Titans. Our guy Timo had a pretty interesting stat about the Titans and their scripted plays and how good they've been in the first quarter. They're doing it to kind of push, hey, maybe the first quarter over under Titans, picking the Titans in the first quarter is a smart move because they've been so much better early in the game rather than later. I don't know if that's the stats kind of show that there's some consistency there, but we've seen that come and go for teams throughout the years, right? Was it the Packers were like unbelievable on scripted plays early on, and then they'd fall apart the first year that Aaron Rodgers was with Matt LaFleur. It doesn't seem to be the same teams every year that deal with this, but that's what the Titans are dealing with right now. Any thoughts on that?
No.
Okay, great. They're using Derrick Henry in the pass game just a little bit more. I do want to highlight Charles Leno, once again, did a really nice job against Micah Parsons. Should be better against Tennessee's lack of edge rushers right now. I kind of like Washington as a home dog here.
As I say, if the offense can't get going in this game, then they're basically done for the year. Washington's defensive front has still got some teeth as well. And like Dennis Daly at left tackle for the Titans did really well in his first game, and then last week not so much. So the first game was sort of like, oh, maybe Dennis Daly can actually hold the fort down at left tackle and not be a big weak link and a liability in pass blocking. And then last week is, okay, probably not. So if that happens again, the Titans offense is going to have some pressure on it. So, yeah, I'm kind of with you. I like Washington's chances of getting back on track in this game. And then if they can't, they are in the Baker Mayfield bucket of I'm out.
The thing that scares me is what I said on the review show the other day, which was like, all right, who pick out the stars for the Titans yesterday? And it was Joe Schobert off the waiver wire, and it was Denico Autry, and he's been a solid NFL player for his career, but it's not like the dude should be taking over games.
He's actually been playing well this year.
He has been. I'm just saying, like, that's classic Titans, right? Getting kind of a journeyman, good, solid rotational defensive lineman to play really well and make some key plays. That's the one thing that scares me a little bit when you go against the Titans is they always do seem to get those performances. But you mentioned the tackles are struggling. If you're watching this game, Titans left guard Aaron Brewer is one of the most fascinating players in the league because he's a guard he's a 6'1", 270, 274. You see the list weight, and it looks like a mistake. Sometimes you get guys that they weighed in as a freshman, and then they gain weight, but you never change. Brewer's like a legit 274, and he's coming off his best game last week against the Colts.
For context, Jason Kelsey, the undersized center that looks like a linebacker out there, is a 282.
Yeah, and center's a place where you do get some undersized guys.
Yeah, but the point is he's 8 pounds lighter than Jason Kelsey.
Yeah, and back in the day,
shorter.
Back in the day, like the old Shanahan teams, it was like, oh, the Broncos like undersized guys. Even in those days, their undersized guys were 290 back then in the 90s. So there's 330-pound guards these days. So it's just he's a fascinating player to watch. Tannehill still throwing the ball pretty well. I have concerns about their playmakers, as I have for quite a while. And I think I'm going to lean Washington as home underdogs here. I don't love it, but I think they're comparable teams, with the difference being, the Titans do they get these underrated contributions sometimes. I'm going to say this week they don't.
Okay.
So give me Washington. Where are you going?
Same.
Wow. Look at us agreeing. Atlanta Falcons at the Tampa Bay Bucs, a battle for first place in the NFC South. Both teams 2-2. Bucs favored by 9, though.
Yeah. It does feel like a pretty good kind of get-right spot for Tampa Bay. The Falcons' defense, all the problems with the Bucs generally, outside of last week where they got lit up by the Chiefs. They got Mahomes. Outside of last week, all the problems with Tampa Bay have been on the offense. The offensive line hasn't been great. The receivers have been injured and not great. Those shouldn't be a problem against Atlanta's defense, which isn't good. So I would imagine Brady's under less pressure. I would imagine he's actually got some receivers who can win, and therefore the offense should look a lot more like we were expecting Tampa Bay's offense to look like this season. And their defense, I think, it's anytime you're facing Atlanta, it's a challenge, but I think they're good enough to slow them down. So I think this is a comfortable win for the Bucs, but 9's a lot of points.
Yeah, 9 is a lot of points. I think the Bucs, they've had a lot of success against Atlanta the last couple of years. They've been a better team. And I agree. I think the Bucs offense is just going to continue to get better. Brady's still throwing the ball pretty well, and he'll have better guys to throw to as they stay healthy. Chris Godwin seems to be healthy right now. He'll be playing. Mike Evans, we'll see what they get out of Julio Jones. But that part of it should be better for the Bucs. I'm also curious to see if they do neglect the run. Was it game script that made them neglect the run the other day, or just like, all right, this isn't working? Leonard Fournette is low. The Bucs running game is bad no matter which way you slice it. Traditional stats, against expectation, all of it. It's just very ineffective. And I'm wondering if they're still going to try to – are they going to try to get the run game right again, or are they just going to say this is Brady, and as long as he has a couple good receivers, put it in his hands, let him go. On the other hand, I want to see Atlanta. Arthur Smith was so excited about their run game coming out of that Cleveland game. And I think, as I've said, there's reasons for that. I think Atlanta did a nice job of exploiting a mismatch. Cleveland was overwhelmed on the defensive front. Tampa Bay shouldn't be, even though they didn't play well at all against Kansas City. Kansas City's got an awesome offensive line. That's part of the reason. So normally you're not trying to run, pass against this Tampa front. You want to spread them out a little bit, and Atlanta's got some playmakers to throw to. But I want to see if Atlanta tries to replicate last week's game plan, which was run heavy, and if they, keep the ball away from Tampa's offense, the whole thing. If they do that, just like I said in the Raiders game, I think that could be unsuccessful and lead to more of a blowout in this one.
It's up to 9.5, by the way.
It's up to 9.5. Yeah, I like the Bucs in this one at 9. I want it at 9.
We can't have it at 9.
It was in the dock at 9.
Oh, I just changed it.
Well, now I don't want it.
Look, these are live updates. The live update has moved the line. It's 9.5. Can't have it.
Give me the Bucs at 9.5.
Still the Bucs.
Yeah.
That's a lot of points.
It's a lot. It is.
I think Tampa Bay wins, but I'm going to lean with Atlanta to cover.
Atlanta's feisty. Not as feisty as the Texans.
God, no.
But they're feisty. I think Tampa Bay bounces back after the Sunday Night Football thrashing against the Kansas City Chiefs. Seattle Seahawks at the New Orleans Saints. We got the Saints by 5.5 in this one. So again, when you're talking about what's the last thing that we just saw, we saw the Seahawks run, 48-45 against the Lions? Seahawks put up 48 points last week. They're 2-2. Saints are 1-3. Saints are favored by 5.5 at home here.
Yeah.
One other very important data point, 10 a.m. start for the Seattle Seahawks as they travel from the west to the east coast.
Oh, I see.
Very important.
I thought you were like, why is the game happening at 10 a.m. Eastern?
10 a.m. for the Seahawks.
Yeah, that was
1 p.m.
confusing.
for most people on Eastern time.
Yeah.
It's also a mountain time as well, which I will not refer to.
No, it is indeed. I'm sure there is a time that it applies on mountain time, but I'm not interested in what it is.
What are you looking for in this one?
I'm curious if the Saints' defensive line has not been great this year. The talent-wise, individual, the collection, it should be good. It should be one of the best defensive lines in the NFL. It should be doing what Buffalo's line is doing or something similar. And it isn't really. It's not like it's playing badly, but it hasn't been the kind of game-changing force that it has the potential to be or probably should be in a game like this. So, can they step up and actually make some plays and really cause problems for that Seattle offensive line? Because if it can't, like if the Seahawks are able to run the ball as well as they've been, if they're able to protect Geno Smith, I'm actually confident at this point that he'll have some success and look good again. Like the number one graded quarterback in the NFL right now.
Number two passing, number one overall.
Like Geno's looked legitimately good. He's had an all-pro caliber start to the season.
Has Geno reached the phase where we can say he's just in a different tier of quarterback than we anticipated. Much like Ryan Tannehill in 2019, we kept saying he'll come back down to earth. It's small sample size, like Tannehill came back down to earth a little bit, but Tannehill's legitimate 3 best seasons have been the last 3 years in Tennessee. And he's never really reverted back to the same play as he had with the Dolphins. It's 4 games, but is Geno Smith there yet? And is that in part because we really haven't seen him play for an extended period of time since 2014?
I think we must be very close to the point where we have to acknowledge that Geno Smith is a different player than a lot of people thought he was. I think remember we were talking about backup quarterbacks and somehow they can sit on the bench for like 6 years based off a game they had one time back in the day, and we just assume they're the same guy 6 years later, and then they get on the field again. It's like, what the hell happened to that guy? It's like, well, he got 6 years older and sat his ass on the bench for 6 years. Like, how much better did you think he was going to be? I think Geno is like the flip side of that, right? Which is he wasn't great as a young player. He struggled. He had a couple of flashes here or there. He had a couple of games here or there that were really good, but basically crapped out of a couple of places earlier in his career, and then became the guy that was a lifelong backup and sat his ass on the bench for a long time. And we just assumed that he's the same guy because all you get to see is a preseason performance here or there or an occasional game in relief duty, and then you're always dealing in small sample size, right? So it's always too early to say, well, is he actually different? It's like, no, it's just one game randomly where he came off the bench, But 6 years or however long it was of Geno Smith sitting down as a backup quarterback could easily have given him genuine developmental time that quarterbacks otherwise don't get in the NFL. Like, we forget because of how much the NFL is now this immediate success thing and how there are quarterbacks that hit the ground running, how long it used to take quarterbacks to develop. Steve Young was garbage for his first few years in the league. And then sat for the next few years, and then eventually got on the field for the 49ers and became a Hall of Fame quarterback. Like, quarterbacks used to take years to become the players that they were going to be. Even if they were high draft picks, even if they were expected to be stars, it took a long time for them to develop. And now you don't get that chance. You get thrown out there after 4 games, and if you're not good after 16 games, we're getting rid of you, or we're looking in another direction, or whatever. You don't get 5 years to figure it out anymore. But you do if you kind of flame out and then survive long enough as a backup and get another shot. You might not take it, or you might not have that ability anyway. You might just be Blaine Gabbert. But I think there's also a world where players like Geno Smith can have like a resuscitated career later on.
Yeah, man, I think well said. I mean, that's where I think in team building world, strategically, do you just store quarterbacks? Like, do you just use 2 roster spots on quarterbacks, carry 4 all the time, just in case at some point they're going to develop, or at some point you're going to have a Russell Wilson that you feel less good about and you flip him, or whatever it is. Or you're like the Raiders and it's like, well, Derek Carr's not getting it done. What if we have a cheaper option like a Geno Smith? Or I don't know. It's for another day. I think in this one, though, the Saints are going to give them a battle. The Saints secondary generally they have games where they make life difficult for opposing quarterbacks, even in the dome, where it's easier to pass. Saints are number 5 EPA per play allowed on 10-plus yard throws. Last week was the first week Seattle's offense really did start pushing the ball down the field. Like, I was complimenting Geno in a different way through 3 weeks. Through 3 weeks, I was saying he's not missing throws. It's a safe game plan. They're working the underneath stuff. But even in week 3, they'd started with Atlanta, opened it up a little bit. Last week really opened it up. I mean, he was over 10 yards average depth of target. DK and Lockett just creating big plays. I don't know if they're going to be able to do that against the Saints this week. There's a reason why it's a 5.5-point spread. The other side is Seattle's defense is as bad as it gets. Tariq Woolen has been fantastic for a rookie, and given that he was a 5th-rounder, freak athlete. Uchenna Nwosu's been one of the better pickups this offseason for any team, playing on the edge for Seattle. Everything else is bad. Run defense, I mean, they're the 2nd worst run defense grade, the 7th worst pass rush grade, and 2nd worst coverage grade for us right now through 4 games. I like the Saints to win. I don't know if they can cover the 5.5, but I like the Saints to win this game for sure.
DK Metcalf against Marshawn Lattimore is going to be a fun battle. They played last year.
New Orleans did a good job. This is the thing. We saw Geno Smith play football last year. And there was a couple good games in there. But when he played against New Orleans, the old Geno Smith tendencies, which was hold the ball, take some too many sacks, he was inconsistent. And that showed up in the Saints game last year. It didn't show up against, say, Jacksonville.
He completed 12 passes in that game.
Yeah.
And a huge amount of that 12 passes, the 12 passes for 167 yards, a ton of which I think came on one DK Metcalf play.
It was one big play.
Like he busted out. Like Marshawn Lattimore, the point I was about to make was Lattimore, DK Metcalf is the kind of receiver that Lattimore does well against. You know, the Mike Evans style of big, physical, gets in a fight type of receiver. And from memory, I think Lattimore basically won that matchup for almost the entire time, and then DK got him with one big play.
Yeah.
And it's like that sort of puts it back in the, the either-or category. But if Lattimore is able to do that to him physically every game, he probably wins that matchup most weeks.
All right, I'm going to take Seattle to cover because 5.5 feels strong, and Seattle plays weird games and tight games. All right, 4 more games here. They're not as good. Detroit Lions at the New England Patriots. Patriots by 3.5 now. It's up to 3.5. We getting Brian Hoyer back here for the Patriots?
It's a good question.
I don't think Mac Jones is going to be able to play.
No.
He's starting to throw more, but I don't see that what looked like a potential season-ending injury with the look on his face. I don't see that being a 2-week injury. Hoyer's still in
concussion protocol.
Mike Reese reports Hoyer, concussion, remained silent during Thursday's practice. It's usually like didn't see him, didn't dress, just remained silent.
Okay.
Mac Jones was a limited participant on Wednesday.
Stoic. Axel.
Bill Belichick and Nick Saban right now both have like pretty injured quarterbacks, and it is hilarious. They're both like, yeah, we'll see what he can do. Like they're both like Saban and Belichick would. We'll see what they can do this week.
Yeah.
Both of them. I mean, this matters if we're going to see Bailey Zappi versus Brian Hoyer. I think so.
Really?
Yeah.
How good do you think Brian Hoyer is? And is it based off a game he played in 2012?
I just think, Zappi, look, he was thrown in there the other day.
Yeah.
Zappi just, there are plays he looked like an overwhelmed rookie. Zappi could be good. He had a decent preseason. He was chucking it down the field, letting guys go up and make plays. That's what they need to do here against this Lions defense. TJ Hawkinson's banged up too. He's coming off of he was Mark Bavaro, Rob Gronkowski, Travis Kelce rolled into one last week. 81-yarder out of nowhere and all that stuff. I want to see him play just to see if Belichick gives him the Antonio Gates treatment. Like we're not going to let TJ Hawkinson beat us type of treatment. I could see that happening if Hawkinson's a go and healthy. And of course, the Lions are giving up the most points and scoring the most points in the NFL.
Yeah.
It's going to be an exciting game in New England.
Statistically, or at least points-wise, the most exciting team in the NFL so far. I'm curious where the Lions' pass rush is. We looked on paper heading into the season, a lot of young guys, but a lot of guys that have shown the ability to get after the passer. And, of course, rookie Aiden Hutchinson. Hutchinson leads them in pressures, but it's taken him, 150 snaps rushing the passer to get those pressures, and his pass rushing grade hasn't been that great. Nobody on their defense has a particularly good pass rushing grade. They're all like in the 50s. They're all below average. That feels like they should be better than that and haven't been yet.
Yeah, there's a lot of pressure on Aaron Glenn at defensive coordinator over there. So they're talking about changes, whether it's personnel, whether it's schematically, simplifying. I know Dan Campbell talked about simplifying things a little bit. I think the Lions are going to respond here. It's 2 1-3 teams, where if the Patriots are going to hold the fort until Mac Jones gets back, you got to win a game like this. And if I think the Lions are better than what they're showing. It's exciting that their offense is creating what they've created. We did an Explain the Grade yesterday about Jared Goff, how Goff played well the other day, but not 390 yards and 4 touchdowns well maybe. But that's what they're doing there, is they're creating big plays, run game and pass game. That's exciting, but the defense has just been so bad in Detroit that, it's a roller coaster ride. But I feel like the Lions are going to kind of like them as underdogs here.
The other important question mark in terms of injuries is Amon-Ra St. Brown for the Lions. I don't still quite understand how it's working as well as it does, but Amon-Ra St. Brown is huge for that offense. Didn't practice on Wednesday, I think, and I don't know, he's a big question mark for this game. If they don't have him, as much as it worked last week, a big part of that was the TJ Hawkinson thing, and it just makes them incrementally easier to shut down if they don't have him there.
One other thing to keep an eye on here is Jared Goff against the zero blitz, the vaunted zero blitz. This was every Belichick disciple, including the Super Bowl in the 2018 season. It was the zero blitz, right? You blitz everybody, you leave everybody one-on-one on the back end. Goff, whether it was Goff or the Rams offense, never really handled this very well. We'll see if it's just a Goff thing, but we've seen, Brian Flores did it in Miami when they played the Rams a couple years ago. Goff threw I can't remember if it was an actual pick six or a should-be pick six. He threw the pick to Stephon Gilmore in the Super Bowl. It feels like Belichick's going to save some of these, for the end, scheming it up and just sending the house and seeing how Goff handles that. So keep an eye on that schematically in this game. All that said, I don't have that much faith in both either Bailey Zappi or Brian Hoyer here. Patriots have to play like last week, right? Get a pick six, control the ball on the ground against Detroit. I like the Lions to cover the 3.5 here.
Yeah, I do as well. Even without Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think that offense is going to put up some points. And I don't think the Patriots defense or the Patriots offense, regardless of quarterback, is going to be particularly good, even against an underachieving Lions defense. So, yeah, I kind of like Detroit here.
All right, we're both taking Detroit. Let's go Chicago Bears at the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings favored by 7.5. Justin Fields is, look, there's just some stats that are unbelievable through 4 games. There's like record-breaking type of stats.
Not in a good way.
Not in a good way. Cooper Kupp has more receptions than Justin Fields has completions. Justin Fields also has 34 completions on the season, and he has 33 dropbacks that have resulted in a sack or a scramble. So he is just as likely to get sacked or run past the line of scrimmage as he is to complete a pass through 4 games so far. I don't know what to do with any of this. And somebody made a Tim Tebow comparison on my timeline, and I'm just saying from how he's playing the game, and you've got this 20 dropbacks type of game where he's running more than he's passing and all this stuff. Like, there are some elements to that.
Yeah, it hasn't been great for Justin Fields. Now, look, everything we talked about in the offseason is still true. This is a terrible, terrible situation around him.
It is.
Bad offensive line, bad group of skill position players. The offense, as it's being called, the scheme, I don't think is actually doing a terrible job, but it's not good for Fields. But he's not helping, And, yeah, there's so many plays. You only have to turn on the tape for a couple of minutes and see there are plays where it shouldn't result in a scramble or a sack, but it does. At some point, Fields actually needs to be able to operate within the limitations of the offense as it currently stands. His propensity right now to just bail on the play and figure something else out on the fly is way, way, way too high. And when you look at what the offense is doing otherwise, like, they're running the ball pretty well.
Yep.
They can apparently run block well enough for either of those running backs to have success behind it. I'm very curious if you're Minnesota or any defense right now. Like, how do you actually – what's the game plan for Justin Fields? Because he's not – the way he's playing the game, I think, is kind of bad for Chicago, but it's also by far their biggest threat, Oh,
like, yeah.
Him breaking out of the pocket and then doing something,
right?
Whether it's running past 5 of your guys, whether it's delivering a pass to somebody deep down the field. That is by far the biggest threat that the Chicago Bears offense brings to the table. On the other hand, it's also by far the most ineffective thing they're doing. So do you just deliberately go nuts and sell out and try and force him out of the pocket on the basis that, all right, he might hurt us once or twice, but generally it's not going well for them? Or do you try and bottle him up and make him play from within the pocket and say, well, he can't even do that right now, so that's our best way of winning?
Yeah, there's definitely a part of you that thinks, like, blitz him like crazy and make him make quick decisions. It's not just him. Like you said, it's the offensive line, right? Pressure up the middle, making that team make protection calls and set up against a blitz. But like you said, Fields can out-athlete people too. You have a free rusher. He'll juke him, get outside the pocket, create some big plays. I also don't think he hasn't lost his ability to make big-time throws. He has one. It was last week against the deep ball to Darnell Mooney. Last year, that was like the one thing coming out of last season where it's like, all right, Fields still shows these special plays. And I've compared him to Ryan Tannehill before, which is not looking as good because I thought Fields could have Tannehill-like accuracy while having Tannehill-like early in his career questionable pocket presence and negative plays and things like that. We haven't seen that level of accuracy at that intermediate range that Tannehill showed. So I don't know if Fields is just there yet, but I know we can flip the field with some big-time throws. They're just not a part of this offense. Because, look, the receivers are bad, the offensive line's bad, and Fields is not playing very well.
No, he's not.
I think Trent Dilfer was trying to defend him in reference to PFF grades. I have people sending me some of that. Trent's a friend. I get it. He gives this PFF knows the what, not the why. And I was like, I mean, the what's pretty good as far as describing what is happening on the play.
I mean, we've told you the why. Like,
I mean, I know I can. The grade can tell you the what. We do know how to describe the why as well. I can see the why.
And at this point, it doesn't really matter. Like, the question, the defense of Justin Fields is, well, the situation around him is bad. Absolutely. Acknowledged. Agreed. And in fact, predicted. Like, we said this coming into the year. That I took on no end of crap for saying that Chicago basically stripped this thing back to bare metal around Justin Fields and then said, now go win games. He's been set up for failure in a way that maybe no other quarterback in the NFL this year has been. Oh, but okay, that's not changing. Like, the question is essentially, is this 100% because of what they've put him in? No, because Justin Fields is also contributing to the failures. He is taking a bad situation and right now making it worse. And, you know, compare Justin Fields to Daniel Jones right now. Daniel Jones has a lot of the same flaws as Justin Fields. He also has a lot of the same positives as Justin Fields in terms of a big arm capable of making good throws. Remember, Danny Dimes came from somewhere before it became ironic. He's also apparently one of the best rushing threats in the NFL as a quarterback, particularly when he's facing the Bears and they just don't bother defending that. Daniel Jones right now is averaging about half the negative EPA per play on that Justin Fields is. So essentially Justin Fields is twice as bad as Daniel Jones this year, is what I'm saying, in a comparably bad situation. Okay, Justin Fields has got Andrew Thomas. The Bears don't have anybody that good, but the rest of that offensive line is bad, and his receivers are bad. So, two pretty rough situations. Justin Fields is about twice as bad so far as Daniel Jones. Like, that's what we're talking about here. It's not all Justin Fields, but this is kind of the reality of what I was talking about coming into the season, which is if this is what the season looks like for him all the way through the year, and the Bears end up with a high draft pick, I don't see how he can be the starting quarterback next year, because they can't turn down whoever the best quarterback available to them in the draft is for this.
On the other side, Bears defense, they have their own problems. They're fourth worst in EPA per play, 10-plus yard throws. I feel like that's going to play right into the Vikings' hands. No answer for Justin Jefferson, Adam Thielen. I like Kirk Cousins to put up some good numbers in this game. 7.5 doesn't feel crazy. I like the Vikings. I like the Vikings to cover. This is where my prediction is the Bears. I don't know their schedule off the top of my head. I know they play Washington next week. That won't be the game. I think we're going to start seeing more Bears games where they're 10-point underdogs as the season goes on. And I think we're going to start settling into, the Bears they're a rebuilding roster, and that's just where they are.
I mean, a week ago, Chicago fans' defense was, we're 2-1. Shut up. Right? Well, now you just lost to the Giants and you scored 12 points. Now you're 2-2 and looking like bad. Your wins came against Houston, who are arguably the worst team in the NFL, and San Francisco in a rainstorm where our immediate reaction was throw that game out immediately. It doesn't mean anything. So that's what you're hanging your record on. This is not a good Chicago Bears team. I think that the Vikings probably win this relatively comfortably. It's also the kind of game where like two random-ass Justin Fields plays make it a 4-point game.
Vikings play down to their competition.
Yeah, that too. Division game. Now, I think Minnesota beat them comfortably twice last year, right? But this is absolutely the kind of game where the Vikings could conspire to make Justin Fields look like a star on a couple of plays, and that's enough to bridge the gap from over a touchdown.
And Cousins in that passing attack have been pretty good outside of the Eagles game, really. Yeah. And so you don't want – that was the one game, prime time, and in front of everybody. And it's not morning, Kirk.
And where they failed, it's been when their offensive line has been overwhelmed, and the Bears don't really have the players to do that. So it should be.
That's what I'm saying. I just don't feel good about the Bears anywhere on their roster. Yeah. Give me the Vikings by 7.5. Two more games to discuss. San Francisco 49ers at the Carolina Panthers. Before we do get into this, though, don't forget about the PFF app. Go check it out. Download it from the App Store. We've got all of your fantasy advice, your betting advice, Sam's great writing, all that great stuff. PFF app, go check it out. We've got the All-Pro team out there as well. We broke that down on the PFF NFL Daily today, but you can read that whole article on the PFF app by Sam. Share it out. Give Sam all the shares. We got a little competition going. We're trying to get Sam to win this thing. So check that out with the PFF app. So the 49ers at the Carolina Panthers. Another one where I feel like the 6.5 point spread here for the Niners. Is it me feeling the Monday night domination by the Niners and the way their defense is playing, and forgetting that 2 weeks ago they barely made or they lost to the Broncos, right? 12-11. They struggled against the Broncos. Am I forgetting that too much? Because 6.5. The other part of it is the Panthers will look terrible offensively, pretty good defensively.
Yeah.
So 6.5, is that enough here in this one? It's at Carolina, the whole deal, but 6.5, the Niners do feel like a much better overall team.
The fact that the Panthers defense is pretty good, I think, is the important part here, because the over-under is under 40 in this game. So essentially, Vegas is saying this is going to be a pretty low-scoring game, at which point the lower scoring the game, the higher the 6.5 becomes in terms of percentage. The bigger a margin that is, the lower you get. So, the Panthers offense is going to get murdered. Like, we just saw what the 49ers defense was able to do to the Rams. The Rams have a better offense than the Panthers do, and if they have problems, they're in the same areas. So we might see a different quarterback in this game for the Panthers. I understand Sam Darnold isn't back ready yet, but Baker Mayfield might get sat down at some point in this game.
You think so?
Yeah.
Are there any rumblings about that?
I mean, we've reached the point in the season where every press conference they're asking about Sam Darnold, but I suspect that at some point there's only so much. I don't even think it's all Baker's fault. I'm at the point
where if Sam Darnold's healthy, I think they'll give it to him.
Oh, agreed.
They'll give him the start.
But I think in the meantime, we might end up seeing PJ.
So we're talking about like Geno Smith shows up 6 years later looking like a completely different quarterback. Like Baker looks broken. And this might be it. Is he going to show up 6 years later and this is it, man? I
don't even think this is admittedly with the caveat that I'm out on Baker Mayfield, I don't think this is all his fault at all. Like this is maybe the worst scheme in the NFL in terms of what they're running. They're setting nobody up for success.
You can't throw out.
I'm not throwing it out. Baker's playing badly. He's not playing well. He is not helping the situation. It's like the Justin Fields thing again. But this is a terrible offense. This is not – I mean, we know this isn't Baker Mayfield's baseline. We've seen his baseline. When he had Freddie Kitchens running the joint, he was playing better than this. Like, this is not what we should be expecting from Baker Mayfield. This is a terrible, terrible Panthers offense.
Yeah, I mean, 6.5 just feels like – I feel like the Niners are going to overwhelm the Panthers. We get to see Nick Bosa versus Ike Ekwonu. That's a fun little matchup there. Icky, much like...
Not if you're Icky, it's not.
Not if you're Icky, but I mean, same thing. Like you're
or Baker.
It's fun watching these young left tackles have to go through the gauntlet, though, right? When they have to go through some of the best pass rushers right off the bat. Like, let's see what you got, kid.
Icky, so last week, Icky had his best game in the NFL. Gave up... What did he give up? One pressure. Gave up one pressure. And he actually did it against a half-decent player, Marcus Golden. Okay, he's... you refer to Arizona's edge rushers as the worst edge rushing situation in the NFL.
It's kind of bad.
But Marcus Golden is a guy that can get pressure, and particularly if you're bringing like a substandard tackle to the table.
No, let me bring some data to the table here. Is it data or data? I go back and forth. I like both. Icky lost 32% of his reps against Myles Garrett. That's a high number. That's a high number in one-on-ones. 32% against one of the best. He shut out Marcus Golden.
Yes.
Who's not that good. He's pretty good.
I put some respect on Marcus Golden.
I like Marcus Golden. He's like mid-tier at best.
Marcus Golden has...
Jihad Ward and Zach Allen. So Icky has shut down those three guys who are average at best.
No, you're underselling Marcus Golden. Marcus Golden has 4 seasons in his career with more than 50 pressures. He's got one more with 46.
What's his best grade? Like 71, 68 pass rush?
His best grade as a pass rusher is 75.1.
Okay, that's pretty good.
He has 4 seasons over 70, including the last 2, in fact.
Good for Icky.
He has never had a grade, until this year, under 60 as a pass rusher.
Consistent. He's solid.
He is at least an average pass rusher, if not above average.
He's Leonard Floyd.
And in particular, going against bad players. Okay. He feasts. So for Icky to show up and limit him to 1 pressure in that game is a win.
I just wanted to highlight the difference here. the shutouts for Ike Ekwonu came against Marcus Golden, Jihad Ward, and Zach Allen. Lost 32% of the time in his debut against Myles Garrett.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see something closer to that.
I agree. I'm saying it's an unfortunate kind of culture shock or, shock to the system for Icky to come out of a game and be like, hey, Marcus Golden's a pretty good player. I did a good job there. I limited him to one pressure. Like I'm feeling good coming out of that game. And then looming on the horizon is Nick Bosa off a 14 pressure game, who bears an awful lot more resemblance to Myles Garrett from Icky's season than Marcus Golden. I'm just saying that's a bummer for the guy.
It's just like the note boom conversation though. It's like Von Miller, Falcons, Cardinals, and then Nick Bosa, and
there's
whenever Micah Parsons faces them, it's a challenge, man.
There's a lot of viable tackles in the NFL that are simply overmatched by elite pass rushers.
One other stat that stood out to me as I was doing my research here: Baker Mayfield against man coverage this year is 14 for 42. He's completing 33% of his passes against man.
Yeah,
that's rough. Niners D is looking good, man. They're going to make plays. Give me the Niners covered in the 6.5 on the road here.
Yeah,
even with the cross country flight.
Justin Fields, by the way, is the only quarterback grading worse than Baker Mayfield right now.
Yeah, it's poor. Panthers offense is poor.
It's garbage. It's terrible.
Yeah. Ben McAdoo said, "I've come in to make an impact," or something to that effect, and I haven't. I'm paraphrasing, of course.
The most complimentary thing you could say is that he hasn't made an impact. You
could say he's made an impact. You could.
Actually, if you were being honest, you would say, you know what, you have made an impact. It's just it's in the wrong way.
Carolina defense, #fun to watch, but not as fun as San Francisco's entire team that's going to cover the 6.5. Houston Texans did you pick?
I didn't, but I'm going with you. Same.
Yeah, you're taking the Niners as well. Out on the Panthers. What are we? Well, one more game. Houston Texans at the Jacksonville Jaguars. Make sure I didn't miss anything. That's 16 games, right? That's all of them.
Sure.
Texans at Jaguars. Jaguars favored by 7.
Yeah.
Coming off of their loss against the Philadelphia Eagles. Jaguars 2-2. Week ago, we had all the feels for the Jaguars. Then they get up 14-0. The feels are still there. And they gave up the next 29 points against the Eagles. So where do we stand on the Jaguars?
Well, what we need to ascertain is whether Trevor Lawrence bounces back after a bad game against Philadelphia, but one that I'm all too willing to throw out because it was raining.
Oh, of course.
It was damp.
Of course. We need the
man fumble the ball away on
4 times.
Look, it was wet. Have you tried to hold onto a football when it's raining?
Okay, Lawrence is QB. Let's just make sure we throw this out properly. 26, including the rain game. In our rankings.
Take out the rain, and what do we get?
Oh, man, they really made this like extra clicks here in premium, huh? They really made the extra clicks. You take out the rain game, he's 12.
See?
So you're talking QB 12 going up against the Texans here. Well, that changes things.
That's what I'm saying. Throw it out. It was damp, and that made him fumble the ball a lot.
Throw it out. It was damp.
Yep.
Can we get a weather report in Jacksonville this weekend?
Well, since you asked, available on the PFF app. Hang on, I just closed it. So
you going straight from the app here?
Yeah.
The weather report?
84, 10-mile-an-hour winds and clear. No rain.
Give me the Jags. Clear weather, QB 12, Trevor Lawrence.
Bounces back now that it's not damp.
Yeah. Let's do it.
I mean, it was very wet out there. You sent me the video of how cold Devontae Smith was. Didn't look fun.
Oh, Devontae, yeah. I mean, dude, if you got a little rain in October's messing with you, there's a reason why he caught 3 passes for no yards, right?
Yeah.
Or 17, whatever it was.
You don't have a lot of insulation working for you when you're 166 pounds at his height.
Yeah.
You're going to feel the cold pretty quickly.
Jags defense actually playing pretty well, making some plays on the back end. And, that's what Davis Mills is also, by the way, he's playing the conservative brand of football. He had a beautiful touchdown pass to Brandon Cooks. Was that last week? The Chargers game? It's all blending together. Beautiful touchdown pass there.
Was that last week?
Mills is kind of taking care of the ball. It's funny because you called him like budget Andrew Luck. He plays differently, though. He's a get rid of the ball quickly, take care of it. He's more in like the Jacoby Brissett line of, not with the time to throw, but on the conservative end of taking care of it and all, the whole thing. Continues to intrigue Davis Mills.
Yeah.
Given the situation. I like the Jags, though. I love watching this Jags defense. I really think, even though, they struggled last week after the hot start, but watching Trayvon Walker and Josh Allen and them dropping into coverage and rushing and some of the athleticism in the middle and on the back end. I like where Jacksonville's going.
I do as well. And when you look at their schedule, they could actually put a run together here. We got Houston now. We both think they'll win. I think they'll cover as well. I think it sounded like you were as well. Then they go to Indianapolis. That's a game they could win. Then they face the Giants at home. Then they face Denver at home. Then they face the Raiders at home. Then they go away to Kansas City. Okay, then it gets tough. Then Baltimore. But then Detroit, Tennessee, Dallas is a rough game. This is a lot of potential wins on the schedule.
Jags are becoming one of my favorite teams to watch. So whatever that's worth. Because they like 2017, you've got this accumulation of all the first-round picks maybe coming together. And even though they lost last week to the Eagles, they lost to the Eagles. Eagles are good. Jags are bouncing back this week, covering the 7.
Yes, agreed.
I talked to my old college roommate last night. First time in almost 20 years.
Okay.
We were reminiscing because we went to the Hall of Fame this weekend. We didn't get to see each other, reminiscing. And he reminded me, I'd forgotten this, that when we were rooming together, I did have a Mark Brunell poster on the wall. He was like, yeah, we had on the mark, it said, as Brunell was.
On the mark.
Yeah. I forgot that I brought the Brunell poster to college.
It's a great pun.
Yeah, it was great. It was good. He's a high school football coach, full air raid. He used to be a wing T guy. He's like, I'm going full air raid. We're doing it. So it's good to catch up with my roommate.
We get the Lions on Thursday night. Can we get Brunell?
When are the Lions? No, the Lions don't play Thursday night football. They play Thanksgiving. But we don't do a Wednesday show.
And then Thanksgiving, we'll mess it up. So
I would rather just be invited to Mark's house for Thanksgiving. Just drive up to Detroit and hang out and do Thanksgiving dinner after the game, maybe.
Yeah.
We'll see.
I don't know how amenable he's going to be to that, based
Mark
off the picture of him,
I think Mark was meeting Kevin O'Connell or something like that the day that I met him. He was just
him and you
wasn't in the right headspace meeting his biggest fan, on the mark. Maybe if I had the poster, we could get him on the show.
You rock up to his house with the poster for him to sign.
Stop calling me.
That would be awkward for everybody involved.
If what?
If you rocked up to his house with the poster and a Sharpie.
Yeah.
Mark, can you sign this?
I may have been at the Lions facility last year, and I was like, would it be weird if I wore my Brunell jersey? They were like, yeah, maybe hold off on that.
It would be, yeah.
Didn't do it. Next time, though. Next time, we'll see. All right, that's it. 15 games, all fully previewed. And, of course, Thursday Night Football. Enjoy Colts and Broncos. Check out the PFF NFL Daily. We'll have some kind of recap on that game. And then we'll be back here Monday morning recapping all of the Week 5 NFL action. We're close to getting you throwing on the field, too.
Yeah, I don't think we can give where yet, but there is a very exciting venue in the pipeline for this that's going to come up pretty soon.
It might be one of those stadiums that doesn't just have one deck. It's got the double deck, and it's a big stadium. It's cool.
So
hopefully.
It's going to be pretty fun, I think.
Hopefully it doesn't fall through and we end up on a high school field. So, check it out. Sam's going to try to throw 60 very, very soon.
High school field might help because I could actually use the mound.
That's a good point. Yeah, the big stadium probably won't.
Can you get your own mound? Can you, bring a...
Yeah, there's portable mounds.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, portable.
Well, you could get one of those.
It's kind of like what UC had. I mean, it's not portable, but it's turf. It'd be a turf mound.
How do we get a portable mound? Do they have that kind of thing?
You can build one. You're pretty handy. You just build it. You got to get the slope.
To build a mound.
Yeah, just throw some turf on it. Turf. Doable. All right, that's it. We'll see you Monday morning. Recapping.
Remember to hit the like button on the way out.
Hit the like button right now. Thumbs up. Hit the like button. We need 3,000. 3,000 likes. That's our goal. Okay. Spread the word. Tell your friends. Yeah. Thanks, everybody. And go poke PFT commenter and Big Cat. Go tell them we need to see you on the PFF NFL podcast next week to preview Commanders and Bears. All right. See you guys Monday.